County Airport Commission meeting for Thursday, October the 28th. And we're starting about 10 minutes late because the Federal Aviation Administration sent information at 6:30 this morning for the meeting. So Executive Secretary was copying that information so we would have it for the discussions with the FAA under the CIP discussion. So with that, is there anyone in the audience that wants to bring something to the attention of the Airport Commission that is not on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll go to the minutes of the September 21st, 2015 meeting for approval.
Approve the minutes.
Motion by Commissioner Bride.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Briggs. Discussion on the motion or the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion is carried, minutes are approved. Go to the financial statement. We have unpaid claims of $288,226.10. And that leaves us about right now 45,000 in arrears, so that we're being covered by the city for that cash flow difference. And the reason, part of the reason that the claims are that high is one of the items that's in there is the new Bobcat that was purchased, and it was 90,000. You'll see that on the first page. It's about 4 items down. So I think it's in that one.
Yeah, I saw that. I was just looking.
And several other bills.
I just wanted to make sure Ken wasn't going to stop paying the benefit for it.
And then we have the payment to KGM contractors of $106,000. So between the two of those, that's about almost $200,000.
We'll move.
Motion to approve the unpaid invoices and acceptance of the financial statement by Commissioner Pavlik.
I will second.
Second by Commissioner Nevenin. Discussion on the motion or the financial report.
Mr. Chair.
Please.
The emergency apparatus maintenance, is that?
Yeah, that's been part of this ongoing discussion about the ARP truck repairs and what have you. Significant repairs in the last 3 months. So that would be reflective of the level of work that we've done on the truck. So that's that's exactly what it cost to do the major repairs. And we can discuss the ARP truck later in the discussion. So that's where it's at.
These repairs are local dollars, correct?
That is correct. That is correct. Yep.
The frame didn't break.
Not yet, no.
We've been through that.
Further questions? Hearing none, the chair will then place the question. All those in favor of approving the unpaid invoices and the financial statement signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion is carried and the financial statement is approved. Thank you. We'll go to the engineer's report, and we want to start with the terminal project.
We've got one quick update that I'll have Sean give on the
right.
pavement project.
Great. Yep.
We, probably everybody remembers, but this year's federal grant consisted of 2 projects. One was the airfield guidance sign replacement, and the other one was pavement rehabilitation out at the runway. The guidance sign replacement isn't happening until next spring, but the pavement portion is complete. Last month you approved pay application 1, and then today I have the final pay application for that work. Both the KGM, the contractor, did the bituminous repairs, and Farner Asphalt did the crack sealing work. That was all completed since the last time we met. I don't know, Tori, do you have anything to add on the work or?
No,
things turned out pretty well from our perspective. The contractor was responsive and did the work they were supposed to do.
Contractor did great work, Sean, SHST did great work, and the end product is as good as we can get with the situation we have, what we have, so no complaints. Very well done. And Sean was instrumental in that created with some funds that we had there, and for some drainage issues we had, and some repairs on some manhole covers we have, and so we used the money wisely.
And with that, the total contract amount with KGM was $227,705. The project came under budget at $217,284.19. So that's good news, $10,000 under our planned budget. And the pay application number 2 then, what I would put before you is $116,546.72. 116,546.72.
And that, what we had passed this morning was 106,000, so that's not,
Yep, so that's in addition to that, 106,000. So that was the stuff that was approved last month, and this would bring it up to their complete final payment for all the work completed, totaling 217,000. Wait, hold on. No. 6,000. So the math isn't quite working there. So the other payment was 106,000?
yes,
Okay, let me, I'll get that number to here in a second.
okay.
One slide here.
It looks like we might have some additional to pay there, but,
What was the motion?
5%. Well, actually, it was 2.5%, I think is the local share. State's paying 2.5% and 95% federal.
Yeah, I have the previous payment as 100,000. So the payment from last month was 106.
39.44.
I'm sorry, 39.
We must go about 10,000.
So that would put payment at $111,244.75. I apologize for that. Yeah, there's a retainage calculation that wasn't included, so I'll make that correction, but that's the.
What was the total, Sean? 111?
111,244.75.
And that would be, the 106, then we should just rescind that part of it.
The 106, that payment was made from last meeting, so that's okay.
Oh, okay.
And then in addition to that would be the second pay application in the amount of $111,244.
And the project is complete, so we can pay that full amount.
That is correct. Yep, no retainage. We didn't really feel that retainage was necessary for this project. KGM's responsible contractor was going to reach out to them if we have any issues with the work that's performed.
Okay, so we have a action claim then for $111,244.75 to close out the project with KGM on the pavement repairs. Bringing the total to the $217,284.72. 79 cents, okay. What is your pleasure with that? That payment? Yep. Motion by Commissioner McBride to pay the $111,244.75 to KGM to close out that project. Second by Commissioner Nevenen. Discussion on the motion or the payment.
Mr. Chair.
Please.
Sean, just quickly, what was included in that project again?
So there was three major portions of the work. The first was the actual pavement repair. We would mill and replace a lot of the larger cracks on the runway. Apron, yep. Second portion of the project was crack sealing, kind of routine maintenance throughout the apron, taxiway mainly, and a little little bit on the runway. And then there was also a drainage correction that we completed on one of the taxiways. Water was bonding up through the taxiways. So we were able to complete all that.
Check it out today, see if it's working.
Yeah.
Further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion to pay KGM $111,244.75, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion is carried and payment is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think.
Okay.
Over there. I think maybe we'll do the CIP discussion first and get Tracy on the line, if that's works for you guys, and then follow that up with the terminal update.
All right.
And we'll let her talk first, then I think we can go through the CIP. I'm sure she has some stuff to share with you on updates from the ADO.
Yeah, so it'll be, I think, two parts. They have a lot of formal things that they want to go through in the papers that they've sent to you. And then we'll actually get into prioritizing your CIP, the airport CIP and all the projects. And then we'll talk about the memo that Benita sent down. That's in your packet.
Did you give them the?
Yep. Thank you.
Wait. Hello, have I got Tracy? Well, Tracy, this is Wade. I'm gonna try to hook you up on the speaker here. If I lose you, I'll call you right back, okay? All right, hang on. We still got you?
Yes.
All right, welcome. I'll turn you over to Chairman Anderson.
Good morning, Tracy. Still with us?
Yes, I'm still with you, and I believe Don Barry over at MnDOT is with us.
Yeah, Don Barry and Matt Lehman. He's from MnDOT.
Good morning, Don and Matt.
Morning, Bob. Morning.
All right, Tracy, we'll start off with, I guess you're gonna lead us through this CIP
Yes, I
discussion?
And Andy might be calling in later. He's probably in his drive-in right now, but he was gonna try to call, but we'll see how that, if he actually is able to do that. So anyway, I'll get started. So good morning, everybody. So I had Tyler print out some package of information for you folks. This kind of the general information, kind of the bookkeeping stuff that we've been doing as we do our CIP meeting. So thank you, Kyra, for printing stuff for me. First thing on that is you should have a sheet that's very colorful with red and green and yellow on the left side. It says sponsor status support for international calls at the top.
Last page. Last page, Bob. Where is last page? Last page.
Okay.
Okay, so what that is this is some of the things we track here in the office, open grants. It looks like we have 3 of them open currently. The 2012 is a real big target for us to close this year. If we could get the 2013 project closed, that would be awesome too. And I was talking with Don earlier. It sounds like he is working on the 2012 and it was submitted to MnDOT earlier this year, and there's an overpayment issue that he's working through, and I believe he is going to go. Did you retrieve that number?
Yeah, there's an overpayment of $14,196. And I've had discussions with Kyra and I believe Chris Porter on that, so. So I think whenever International Falls is ready, which I think they are, they've probably been waiting for me, they can send in a check to, us in the amount of $14,196 payable to the Commissioner of Transportation. And then we can get the accounting information from Tracy Headings and get that overpayment taken care of and the project closed out.
Okay. So I'm not too worried about that one. The next box is expiring funds, and of course you know that you have $1 million of 2013 money that needs to be used this year, or it expires, or you can transfer it to others. Hopefully we could get this project going forward and we won't need to do any transfers of that like we did last year. The next box is green because you guys don't have any payments that are any projects where it's been more than 9 months since you had a payment. The next one is the SAMHSA expiration date, and this is something Kyra is probably aware of. You have it set up that it'll have to be renewed before May 7th of next year. What we really like to see is for you guys to have it renewed, in the October, November timeframe. That way you get through most of the grant cycle without having it expire. Because if it expires, number one, we can't program anything, we can't issue a grant, and we can't make payments. So that, right after the end of our fiscal year, at the end of September, there's kind of a lull in activity, so that would be a good time to have it renewed. And you can go in and change it any time, and so I would recommend that maybe here in the next few weeks you go in and renew it now, so then it won't expire until late next fall. It's entirely up to you, but that's just a recommendation to keep things moving smoothly.
We'll do that, thank you.
Yep. The next box is the risk assessment, and there's another handout in your packet that explains our risk model policy, and attached to that are some forms. And we have to do those, have you guys submit every 3 years. And since you guys did it back in 2013, we're going to be needing to see an update to that this year, 2016. So I believe our office will be sending out letters notifying folks and reminding them that that's due. So be looking for that. Kyra, I don't think you were there last time that was due, were you?
No.
No, okay. Then your ALP is up to date. The last 5010 inspection was, I believe I attached that as well. It shows an inspection date of 2013, or that's when it was last updated. I do have a record of, well, obviously the approaches are deficient according to this printout. It shows you have a 16-to-1 and a 24-to-1 approach surfaces on 1331, and the geo precision approach, those should be 50-to-1. So last correspondence I had with you prior to last year's grant was that you were working on getting the trees removed and expected to have that completed by the end of September of this year. So I was just wondering what the status of that was. Have you gotten all the trees cleared? Are they cleared to the 50-to-1?
Let me call on Thor Anderson, the airport manager.
Hey Tracy, it's Thor. Yeah, at this point in time, we're at about 50% of that project. We're actually utilizing our new skid steer brush cutter.
You have to stand up and talk.
Here, let me. Tracy, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, we're about 50% of the way through the project of the clearing on both the 3-1 and 1-3 approach zones. We're utilizing our new skid steer / brush cutter at this time to do that work. We're anticipating having that done by the week of 11/16. So by November 16th, we'll be at 100%. And in fact, we're going to be a little bit on the aggressive side to get ahead of it. So that certainly is our target, and that'll certainly happen because obviously our overnight inspection want to be at 100%. and that's the update at that point.
Okay, yeah, I'd very much like to see that completed before we try to issue a grant for the terminal.
Sure.
This is a critical airside need. So if you would provide documentation when it is complete that shows the clear approaches, I would really appreciate that.
Sure, and how do you want that, in what form? You want me to give you a call or send you an email or work through Sean or?
I work for Sean to provide some sort of a survey that shows the approaches are clear.
Certainly. I think we can schedule that up. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, and then the last thing on that sheet is the Exhibit A update. We just accept what's in the ALP at this point because most of them were developed before our Exhibit A requirements were updated a couple years ago. So next time folks do a master plan or ALP update or acquire land, that has to be updated. So just a heads up that if you ever guys do acquire more land or next round of master planning, that's something that's going to happen. Let's see. So the next item on the list is there should be a cover page, and it's our pre-application package. The reason I included that is if you turn to like the second or third page, there's a schedule of sample material. And what we've been pointing out is we've used this form last year, and we revised it slightly, mostly in the schedule, just to add a few items that need to be submitted to kind of keep people on track and make you aware that we moved the pre-application deadline up to December 15th, which kind of, I believe, backs up MnDOT's need to have it to them by December 1st. Is that correct, Don?
Yeah, that's that. We'd like them all by about December 1st.
Okay. And then this year we're required to do 90% review of plans and specs to the 90% point, and we need 45 days to review them prior to advertising for bids, so that gives you some time to, if there are some changes, we recommend that SCH would have time to modify and incorporate that in the bid package. That along with that, there's a preliminary engineer's design report, and that report is due 1st of February. We would like to see the professional services agreement by mid-January. So you can see what those timelines are. Others in there will be specific to your project, so we just need to have that filled in as part of the pre-app package. It should be very familiar. This year we also have a new standard operating procedure that requires, that has a new application form, which is basically very much the same as this pre-app form. So most of the information is collected early, which allows us to have the information we need to program, and then the final version will be just probably some minor adjustments on the grant description and the project cost based on the bids that would come in as the actual application later. And of course, we don't have any date as to when the application is due yet. That usually gets published in the Federal Register notice, but typically it's about the 1st of May. Or no, wait, no, it was July 2nd this year. But we need by the 1st of May some determination whether you're going to move forward with the project or not. So let's see.
Tracy, this is Wade. Before we go on, can we go back to the sponsor status report and the risk assessment portion? And as Kyra noted, I mean, she hasn't done one. I don't recall in the past, I'm referring to the second portion there where it says a sponsor must submit the form to initiate the process. How does that work? What have we done in the past? I just don't
So
know.
there's a form attached to the back of that policy that is basically a bunch of questions that talks about, well, you know, you need to check the boxes that kind of go or support your procurement process, you know, what kind of oversight you have on your grants, how you into everything, what kind of, the paper, do you have a electronic process, do you have some sort of a business continuity plan? So it's just a matter of kind of checking the boxes that actually apply to how your process works, and then signing and sending it in to us.
Okay.
And then we review it, we have to fill out, I have to fill out a form. Subsequent to that, then kind of relate our perspective and verify that we checked it, and then it goes into, it gets uploaded into a database, so. It's not really a very onerous process, it's just answering questions.
Thank you.
Any questions after that?
Nope.
So we want to remind folks that we're trying to get ahead of the curve, and so our environmental person doesn't have a huge, just get inundated with CAD access. We can start thinking about doing CAD, the environmental piece for your future projects, for next year's projects now. We'd like to see the 2016 project for them to come in between mid-September and December, and by the end of December, so they get a chance to work on those. Obviously, your terminal project, we already have that document, but if there's going to be any other projects that are going to go along with it, we still need to do those. I have to remind you that you have to select consultants every 5 years. You guys are pretty good. Bob, of course, can you tell me when that last occurred?
I think it was
13.
13.
Okay, that's what I thought. Andy just joined us, so. You're late, traffic was a little slow this morning. Yeah, that rain was nasty. Okay. So I guess, that's all my major talking points. Did you want to go talk about, you know, the status of our funding and everything?
Sure. So we have two pieces of legislation that have passed. We did get a 6-month extension to the AIP program, but there's an appropriation that only takes Congress out to December 11th at this point. So there's some further actions that Congress needs to put in place. But at this point, it looks like we have 6 months of funding, which is half of the $3.35 billion. So we do have a grant program that we can work with, and we'll be looking at what options we can towards the first of the year. So we don't have a lot of information. We haven't run any of the formulas for funding yet at this point, but we'll be sure to share that as soon as we get that information and also share timelines. From what we've seen, you know, we certainly have at this point a multi-year program, but kind of the advice we're giving at this point is let's just treat it as a normal year. When we go into these multi-year programs and we try to do multiple grants, it really just drives the overall cost for projects up because every grant has a closeout and administration costs. So we'll certainly entertain any requests for grants early, but we would also ask that if there's no logical need for it, just treat it as a regular year.
Please, Bob Kors.
Andy, I just have a question for you. So then, with the money that is available, that means we have 6 months. So not that they're going to request 500,000 at this time, but that's what is available for this year.
Hello, Bob. Actually, so it's half of the available program, and so they need to run formulas for where it is, but at 50%, it ends up being a little bit less. But what they do, what would be available is half of the entitlements for International Falls. And what we would look at when we look at an airport, we obviously try to use the oldest money first. And so it would be half of the available entitlements going back to, so we're in 16, it'd be 13. Yeah.
Oh, so it's half of
if there's $4
everything.
million available, there'd be $2 million available in a half-year program.
Okay, got it.
Thank you.
They were just confused, but I guess my recollection is we have split programs before there's a certain amount that comes off the top, so it's not necessarily an exact 50%, it might be some odd percentage, something less than that.
Yeah, it comes out a little bit less than that. They have some obligations that they have to meet up front. There's some letters of intent and some other programs that they fund off the top, and so there is a little bit less of that percentage than 50%. And that's why I say we haven't seen the actual formulas yet because they haven't been run. But the good news is that we did get 6 months of an appropriation. We need 6 months to actually even run the formulas to do a grant program. So when they only give us 3 months at a time, we can't even run a grant program at that point.
Okay, so I guess those are most of the talking points I, had to cover as far as just general bookkeeping. So I guess I'd like for us to start talking about what you folks are thinking about for your project for 2016 and subsequent years, and how we can make all that fit and work. I know that the 2 big projects, I think we have to think about the ARC equipment. Obviously, the terminal is a high priority for all of us. And then it sounds like you have a major runway rehabilitation project with a few smaller projects scattered through there. Last week, we met with Bob Coors and had Bob Anderson and Kyra on the phone as well, just to kind of go through some of the projects that they saw out there without any kind of priority on it. So I know with the hope that Bob you can kind of start thinking about where your priorities were and how you wanted to line them up here the next 2 years going forward. So have you guys had an opportunity to talk about that, discuss any further beyond what we talked about with Thor and Bob and Kyra last week?
No, we have not, as a commission, had any discussion, and I think we probably should maybe start by just listing what those projects are. So we've got the terminal project, we have the passenger loading bridge, we have the commercial airline apron, we have the ARF vehicle recommendation, pavement rehab, the 1331 reconstruction, land acquisition, I think, has always been one of the items that we've had in there, but we haven't used it for quite a number of years. So Bob,
Right, so, and if I could, so Benita and Sean were also part of that meeting that we had last week. And what we wanted to do was talk with the FAA and MnDOT, with Bob and Kyra, just to kind of run through the initial pieces of this. But the memo that Benita wrote is in your packet, and that does list all the projects with a description, as well as an estimated cost right now that we would use for the CIP. After our meeting, there are a few revisions to this that we still need to make, but we thought we'd wait until after this meeting to make those. And what the outcome of this is to put together the airport's capital improvement plan we listed the projects that we know about, and the estimated costs, and we, without prioritizing them as to when they would occur. But that's what we need to do in order to get into the state and federal system, is identify what years we're gonna be doing these projects.
Right. And I would like to add that we are having a meeting internally to talk about some of these higher priority projects and bigger projects next week. So I would really appreciate having a fairly firm draft by Monday.
Okay,
And
so.
I know we have some, sure, fairly good ideas to work with, and we'd like to have a little bit more information and confirmation from you folks.
Okay, so if I could, we'll just run through the projects quickly. And then, the end of this is we do need to prioritize when we're gonna be doing them.
In what years we're gonna be.
What years, yeah. So the first one is the terminal, and as we all know, that currently is broken down into phase 1 and phase 2. So those would, in theory, occur in different years. We did break out the passenger loading bridge. That is a project that is eligible straight for the 95% federal funding. It's easy piece to break out, so we thought it'd be good to separate that out from the terminal, use it as an alternate. The commercial air service apron expansion, we've talked some about that at the last few meetings. The actual size of that is yet to be determined. But right now, we're estimating that cost to be around $850,000, and that would actually bring the commercial service apron out to the edge of the new terminal, or something beyond.
That was your issue. Have you been involved?
Yeah, if I may.
Yep, please.
Benita and I had a discussion yesterday regarding the apron extension and what distance we have right now. I believe we're at 140 feet from this point, from the corner of the existing terminal building to the edge of the apron. What happens, Tracy, in that area is that we use that as an example. We had a CRJ that was down on Mains for 3 days last week. We use that for a parking area for not only maintenance on the airline aircraft, but also Sun Country flights, what have you. If we're running out of a room on the ramp area, reposition the CRJs to get the 737s in and out. And also we use that area for larger corporate jets. So the concern in the past, the discussion has been, there's been discussion about using it for only for the space utilized at this point for the square footage we have on the ramp versus the apron area. It is not just a snow removal issue, it is also an aircraft parking and movement issue. It's very concerning to me as the airport manager that if we build a new terminal structure on the edge, quote unquote, of the apron that we have existing at this time, that will not be sufficient for aircraft movements. It's very concerning.
Right now, the particular expansion is not shown on the ALP, so we would have to have that added in order for it to be eligible, number one. And we would have to have some sort of submittal of in justification to make an eligibility determination, and then it would have to have an environmental determination as well. Likely it would be a CADX. So those pieces are something we really need to have before we could make a final determination on eligibility.
Okay.
Bob has sent me a copy of kind of the track of the aircraft movement. But like I say, we need some more support information before we can make a determination on that.
Hey Tracy, this is Benita. I just wanted to give you one update. We've been talking to you, I think, previously about the need for that additional expansion based on aircraft movements and taxiing through that area. Thor and I talked quite a bit yesterday, and the one thing that I was unaware of that we'll address and we'll put together a justification for your consideration is this space that he's utilized in the past for overnight commercial aircraft. They can't maneuver over in the general aviation area, so the only place that he has to park those aircraft if they're either an overnight or being serviced is that area to the south of the terminal building. So what we'll do is we'll factor that into the justification, and I'll get something over to you so you can have a look.
And I did pass out the drawing, Tracy, that we sent to you with the aircraft movements. So the commission has seen that. Okay. The next one is the air rescue and firefighting vehicle, which has been identified in the Part 139 inspection as something that needs to be purchased. And so, yeah, Thor.
Tracy, it's Thor again. You've been involved in many of the discussions in prioritizing of a new ARF vehicle. Complex situation, I'll do my best to encapsulate it. Many conversations with Michael Stevens, our 139 airport inspector. Discussion was that it's a 1996 vehicle coming up on the 20-year mark, and we recently have done some major repairs to the vehicle, and we're up running now at about 95%. We need to be at 100, which the story will follow. Talking with Michael about the need of the new vehicle, what was not discussed, and I believe many airport managers do not know, I discovered this actually last Friday evening about 6 o'clock, talking with, I'm sharing this information for the groups, not for the FAA's sake here, but for the group's sake. At Friday evening about 6 o'clock, I was on the phone with the VP of Oshkosh Fire Trucks discussing a new truck, what the costs are, breakdowns, etc. And he shared with me, which was very surprising to me and to two other airport managers in the Northern District, that as the new Index A, we are an Index A airport, which really encapsulating is we're 90 feet or less, we're less than 5 flights, 7 flights per day, 70 seats or less, etc. The old quote-unquote Index A spec was as follows. It's 1,500 gallons of water, 250 gallons of foam, 400 pounds of dry chem. For whatever reason, and a lot of folks in the industry are, I know there's a big push to get it back to where it was, but the new spec basically states 275, actually 300 gallons of water, 200 pounds of dry chem, a small bumper turret mounted application device. In essence, you're ending up with a first responding vehicle versus what we have now. As an example, they're applying the agent with the new Index A trucks with the 33 horse 2-cylinder diesel engine. Where we are right now with our older 1500T truck, we're at, to give an example of a comparison, we're at 600 horsepower, 1,500 gallons of water, 250 gallons of foam, 400 pounds of dry chem. I talked with some other airport managers. They're learning as I have just. Apparently, this was just in the last year. This Index A change, and it is my understanding there is a pretty severe pushback in the industry. In my opinion, justifiable. That this is a huge step backwards in safety. Having said that, it is my opinion and my recommendation to the group that we continue to update our existing truck, allocate some funds to bring this up to 100%, and continue to use our truck that we have at this time, with the hope and the thought that maybe they'll get back to an Index A change in the near future. I've had this discussion, Tracy, with Michael Stevens, today being Wednesday. I would think that would have happened maybe Monday morning, and he concurred with my conclusion. I would certainly invite you to have a discussion with Michael if any details need to be worked out there. But that is certainly my recommendation to this group, is that we continue updating slash refabbing our existing truck, because I can't, frankly, Marlon, I think you sit here and say, let's let's spend X amounts of hundreds of thousands to go backwards on a safety issue, and I'm very concerned about the safety issue, and that's my recommendation of the group.
So your recommendation is to kind of rehab the present vehicle?
Yes.
Making sure that all of the pumps and everything are operational, that the turrets are all working?
And I have an estimate on issue at this time, and I realize that it can only be funded locally, but basically overly simplified, a new bumper turret with new controls and bringing the lighting package up to the new FAA requirement. I'm estimating about $15,000.
In addition to the 11,000 that we've already.
That is correct.
That we put in.
11 plus whatever that, I think we've maybe at 14, we put in 13 at this point maybe.
I only have bills of 11.
Okay.
So you've done some rehab on it already?
Yes.
11,000, but we need to spend about an additional 15 is where you're at.
That is my best guess.
In dealing with Oshkosh.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
If I could,
Please.
Tracy and Andy, do you guys see that Index A changing in the future?
Yeah, Bob, this is Andy. So we've certainly run into what Thor has described at other airports. We've worked with the airport certification staff to kind of talk about the justification of what's there, so we can maintain the equivalent level of service that we have at airports. I think of two recent examples, not this grant year, but last grant year, where we were able to successfully keep the same size of ARF trucks that were there, the 1,500 gallon trucks. And so I don't know if that's something that's a consideration for the fall, if that's the route they want to go, or they simply, if you guys just want to. Sounds like you got a plan developed to keep your existing ARF truck, and as long as CERT's fine with that, we defer to them.
But, so you're saying that they could keep the same size truck if they were to purchase it this year?
No, what I'm saying is we've been successful in justifying that. We have to go through that gauntlet again. There are no guarantees. But we've looked at that. It was most recently done at Rhinelander 2 years ago, and then also out in a couple airports in the Dakotas.
Okay. What's the additional justification that's required? Do you have any feel for that?
We're basically looking at the fleet mix and aircraft that are there and response capabilities. So there's a process to go through.
Okay.
Commissioner Pavlik has a question.
We spend an inordinate amount of time trying to comply with these federal rules and regulations. I guess my question, maybe it's for Thor, or you folks too, if we go ahead and revamp that vehicle, is it going to meet the requirements into the future before we spend a ton of money onto it? I guess that's my question.
Well, you're inspector, Part 139 inspector, and you have had discussions with regard to that?
Yes, and to be specific into answering Wade's question, theoretically, strangely, we'll actually be above the new Index A standard, if that makes sense, because we'll be at 1,500. Now, clarification, back to where Bob is discussing, and I appreciate that, is and I very much appreciate Andy's direction on that. But as far as what Michael Stevens told me when my inspector is that we would make spec and keep spec. Okay. Now, clarification on that also, to be sure that we're very clear with this. It is not to say that if within a year the truck has another major breakdown. We are literally at this point in time piecemealing the truck together. We are literally doing aftermarket plug-ins, etc. Okay. So I would exercise caution. Let me phrase it and put it in that. Are we going to get a year out of it? Yeah, I'm confident in that. But I'm also saying that these repairs that we're talking about, there is a possibility that we have a major break and we can't get parts.
So we're kind of on a year to year, but this would certainly buy us a year or two making these improvements.
At this point in time, yes.
Okay.
But I think what,
That's very up to you guys. I mean, we've had airports with similar vehicles that have put more money into them to keep them longer. It's not like at 20 years they turn into dust and fall apart. But it's also a piece of equipment that you're going to see this on your cert inspection as a recommendation every year going forward. Cert will, once they put the recommendation out there, they'll continue that. But it's certainly a piece of equipment that when you need it, it's got to be reliable and there. So
Andy?
if you guys are comfortable with that and it meets those criteria, you know, that's a choice that the commission and the airport needs to make.
Andy, in regards to what Bob Coors asked about the funding of a new truck, the question is on the cert recommendation, since it's been on there in excess of 3 years, does that carry precedent? If the certification recommendation was there before the index 8 changed, reducing the amount of chemical/water available, would that have an influence on the decision of whether that truck is fundable?
No, it's a recommendation. Any recommendation that comes on there is purely that, it's a recommendation. Letters of correction draw a different level of attention from us, but you'll see recommendations all across the board on a certain section.
Thank you.
Well, I certainly think the price that Thor has, even though it's a local expenditure of $15,000, I think buys us some additional time. And also, I think since the change in the specification, it sounds like we're going down to a pickup with a hose.
In essence, that's what they're doing.
And it seems to me that we ought to be, waiting to see if these are going to change based on what the airports in the country are telling the Federal Aviation Administration. All right. It's
Yeah, and I guess I should just want to reiterate, I guess that does come at a local cost.
Yes.
So I don't
yeah, and I
know
think Don Berry pointed that out too. Hibbing, Don, I think you said that Hibbing put a new motor into theirs a year ago or 2 years ago.
212.
Yeah, I did check. We did fund a new engine for one of their vehicles as a state local grant. I think it was done back in 2012, I believe, 2013.
I believe it was 12 done.
Okay.
It was 12, and then at that time, while that truck went out of service, they were able to utilize Grand Rapids ARF truck. So, you know, that's something you guys might want to keep in mind if you ever do need service and you know you're going to be without it. A call over there was a piece of equipment at the time that met the index criteria.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, do we want to move on to the next item?
Sure, yeah, the next one is the annual pavement rehabilitation, which we've been programming about $250,000 annually to put into pavements around the airport. In anticipation of the next project, which is the reconstruction of 1331. And Benita, I'll let you chime in on this one.
Yeah, we talked about this on the phone just the other day. I think everybody recognizes that we've got some old pavement out there. Tracy, we talked about the PCI report that shows that it's still in really good shape. It's not necessarily an indication of the true pavement out there. It's a full depth asphalt pavement on a clay subgrade. So we're getting some unusual things that are happening. Thor can probably describe them in greater detail, but heaves and humps and cracks and things like that, and so the $250,000 that we program for pavement rehab every year addresses those type of piecemeal or localized repairs, and we're continuing to do that. But the reality is that somewhere in the next, I would guess, 5 to 8 years, somewhere in that time frame, a more substantial reconstruction project will be necessary. And you will see as we adjust the CIP, we're going to phase this project. We'll look at it a little bit closer, but we're going to include separation of costs for the engineer's design report, final design specs, and so forth. But we will put the runway reconstruction down in a couple of different years, or over a couple different years, so that we can have a more reasonable discretionary ask. But you'll see that project show up in the 5 to 8 year range when we update the CIP. But just wanted to make the group aware that that project will be coming.
I guess, Benita, the length of our runway at 7,400 feet, in order to do this project, and I think, what are we looking at, 10 to 15 million to do
Yeah.
the
I think that's a
entire
good number.
runway?
Mhm.
And so, you're talking about maybe doing a third of it each year?
Yeah, I think
Over
something
3
like that. I think the intent is to try to keep as much pavement length available as we possibly can over 2 years. So we would reconstruct one end, and then the following year reconstruct the other, and then try to minimize the center section. It's a process that Andy's familiar with. We're kind of doing that in Duluth right now, and the intent is to try to minimize the impacts on operations here. So it would likely be a 3-year phase project, and then Andy can speak of this as well. They usually only do a $5 million discretionary grant. I think that's a reasonable request, so we would try to take each chunk in or around that number.
So if we were to start that in 2019 or 2020, would that be the kind of date that you're thinking of?
Yeah, I would think so, because the first step in that, and back to my point about not being clear on exactly what's going on underneath the surface of that pavement, the engineer's design report that the FAA requires now is a good first step. That would go together with the final design plans and specs in 1 year, and then we would do construction in subsequent years. The engineer's design report would include borings, non-destructive pavement testing to see what's going on. We would do a pavement design, look at phasing, all those things would be encompassed in that report, and it would be a good first step towards the project.
And we also talked about the taxiway being a pavement that was constructed later, so we would separate that out as a separate project. So there would be a design report around the taxiway, and then the taxiway would have its own project as well, happening after the runway.
Question, Mr. Chair.
Please, Commissioner Pavlik.
Thank you. Define minimal for 3 years when it comes to the traffic interruption, because that's an issue.
Yes, it is.
Well, the first 2 years when we're doing ends, we would take a look at it, much like we did when we did the runway reconstruction. We relocated the thresholds so that we still had a length of pavement after that. That's what we look at for this. So we would do 2 smaller sections off to the end, but the center section, that's the part that we can't keep operations on. So we would have to have a runway closure at some point to address that. Now, would that be nighttime operations? You know, how we would do that, I think would all come out as part of the engineer's design report. So maybe we would require, you know, for critical parts of that project, maybe we'd require them to work at night so that the runway is open in the morning, or we would do it in stages so that they would work part of the time in the night, and then by the time the morning rolled around, we would have pavement. We'd have to work through that as part of the design report.
We have done some of that in the past, I think.
We did for the extension, yep, and it would be a similar process.
Okay, all right.
We've had discussions in the group about using utilizing 24/7 construction segments for tourism. Okay. Obviously, any of the runway, any time, if you're under construction, there's no 121 carrier service. Part of the discussion was possibly starting any of these projects the first week of September, push hard, you know, get a 30-day window, whatever. In the meantime, utilize the runway 3113 taxiway for corporate traffic. These are all things that we've done in the past. Historically, it would certainly be my recommendation that I think that, you know, conventional wisdom in the past has been you're going to spend so much more money on 24 hours of construction, but it certainly has been my observation that those monies are well spent up front. Otherwise, the project gets protracted. The loss of revenue is horrendous to everyone. So it would certainly be my recommendation that we would do exactly as we are suggesting. Into thirds, try to do 24-hour construction and starting into late in the season.
Thank you.
Commissioner McBride.
I think Thor kind of answered my question. So for Benita, this would essentially be, we'd have 3 years, we'd have some disruption of our commercial traffic.
Yeah.
And anytime we take a 1-year project and piece it out over 3 years, you increase costs.
You do.
So,
Yep, one of the things, and Tracy or Andy can speak of this too, though, is it's very unusual to get a grant and, you know, for a whole project, that $12 to $15 million.
Understand.
Yeah, that would be the difficult piece of it. So not only would we be trying to minimize the impact on the traffic, we're also trying to conform to the FAA funding requirements. Recognizing that, to your point, it will drive up the costs.
And I think as we get closer to the project, we'll be working closely with the FAA to determine how we actually do phase it. If it is 3 or 2 or.
You know, while you were gone, Bob told us he can get us anything.
Don't let them fool you.
Please,
Just to continue with the FAA, I'll speak a little bit to it. It should be clear to the commission that, you know, we're here to support the infrastructure and reconstruction of infrastructure that's out there. Runway pavements are a very, very high priority to us. So it should be clear that we're there to financially support this project when it's eligible and justified and ready, which are all things that SEH is working towards. We'll do our best to support that in however many phases it needs to be. It's not always in $5 million chunks. Sometimes there's a story to be told, how an airport operates, and you know, maybe that amount changes. And so we'll be working with you guys to figure out what that story is, and so we can be there to do it. The most important thing that we need from you, from the commission and SEH, here, start this. We have 208 airports in Dakota, Minnesota, ADO right now, and we know we have some very, very expensive, high-priority projects coming up. We've got runway pavements that were built in the 50s all across our 3 states that are all coming due. And so the dollar amount is important to us, but it's more important of the year, because we have to fit these puzzle pieces together in the next 3 to 8 years. And it's very, very, very competitive. We're getting to the point where we're looking at projects that we had historically funded in this ADO that we are not able to reach anymore. So this is an important project. It's something that we'll be able to reach, but we really, really need a year.
so for the design report that would be done by engineering, are we looking at 2018 or 2019?
Well, I guess it depends on what else you have in those prior years coming up.
Well, I think the terminal project in 2 phases and the ARF vehicle are probably the 3 top ones that we have. The others are smaller pieces.
I think 2019 would be reasonable. That would be the engineer's design report with final design plans and specs all in 1 year. We would probably bid it out that year with construction the following year for phase 1. And I think for now, we'll take a look at it in a little bit more detail when we get back to the office. But right now, I think a 3-year phasing program would be appropriate.
And one thing we should point out is that the engineer's design report needs to be done in conjunction with plans and specifications to be eligible for funding. So you have to be,
That would include both the runway and the taxiway design.
well, they would be, yes, but they would be done, that's why they're being done as separate
Yes.
projects, because the pavements are not, we're not constructing the same year.
The engineer's design report would be strictly towards the runway. The
Right,
taxi
this
would
one,
be a
but the
subsequent
taxi
year.
one would be, taxiway design report would be with the taxiway at a later date.
Purely separate from each other, so
Yeah.
we're clear on
Okay? Yes, Commissioner Nevin.
What's the typical life cycle of asphalt?
that. I think if you get 20 years, you're doing good, and we're obviously beyond that out there. So the thing that makes this pavement unique, and again, I probably defer to Thor on the history, but my understanding is that it's very, very thick asphalt pavement on no aggregate base or no real true drainage layer like we would normally design it if we were starting from scratch. So that is, I think, why we're seeing some really strange things happen out on the runway. It's certainly not a full scale, all across the board, the pavement is failing, but we're seeing enough instances now, more frequently probably in the last 5 years.
It's changing to the negative, to the worse exponentially. There's no question it's getting, in very poor terms, it's getting worse faster, shall we say. Combination of what Vinny is saying about the design of the product originally, and reminding the group that the airport's it's 87% wetlands, and we live in the coldest place in the world.
We have no one.
No wetlands at the airport, as I mentioned, and but it definitely has the expansion contraction cycle in the winter months is substantial. So it's something that definitely needs to be addressed priority-wise. And I certainly back up Benita's timeline, but I also cautionary, it'll need to be monitored and obviously between now and then, i.e. 19, that if indeed, we still have to keep, in my opinion, the $250,000 per year, keep that plugged into the equation, to keep us at that spec.
If I could just add, Mr. Chair, MnDOT on the highway projects, at least in our district, looks at 20-year recycles too. County follows it. We just did the Lake Road, that was 20 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think, as evidence to what Thor is saying about the probably more rapid deterioration that we're seeing, 5 years ago or 6 years ago, we weren't doing pavement rehab projects. We just weren't seeing any concerns out there. And now not only are we doing them, they're increasing in cost. 3-4 years ago, we were doing $100,000. Now we're doing, almost triple that. So we're seeing some concerns, and I think, like Thor said, we just need to keep an eye on it as we go through the next couple of years.
Okay, and the next one is a general aviation apron lighting. We have about $50,000 program for that. And Thor, you can chime in on any of this if you want.
Leave it in for now.
Okay, medium intensity runway lights for runway 422, $250,000. Snow removal equipment, we do have cost varies in there that they're serviceable for 10 years, so are there any coming up?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. Thor and I, over the next few weeks here, we talked about this. We're going to take a look of all of their existing equipment. And this is to MnDOT's point that they want us to look ahead to 20 years. We're going to look at all their existing equipment. And when one gets to 10 years, we're going to program in a replacement for that, so that we have that in the 20-year program and we're aware of where those needs are.
In fact, we already at, it's hard to believe it, we already have a bunch of equipment that's up to 10-year mark plus, so that's hard to imagine.
We're getting older.
The next one is a maintenance hangar. There's $1 million in there for that. That is a maintenance hangar that has historically been on the CIP, and that was for overnighting Mesaba aircraft.
Time discussion.
And when we spoke last week, it was something we thought we could remove from the CIP. We didn't feel there was a need. I don't know if the commission wants to vote on that, or
They've never parked them yet, have they?
And they won't.
okay, so we'll just take that one out. And then land acquisition, of course, that has been in there as a placeholder for any land that becomes available. And as Tracy mentioned, there is a new standard operating procedure for the FAA regarding land acquisition. So anytime we do any land acquisition, the Exhibit A property map will need to be updated. And it's quite an effort. So we have to take what we have and verify that all of it is accurate. Short of doing a boundary survey, there's no boundary survey that is eligible, but you do have to do a lot of property research.
All right, so if we can go back, can we start at the terminal rehabilitation phase 1? That would be a 2016 project.
Yeah.
2020, the phase 2 would be a 2017. The passenger loading bridge would be a 2017 or 2018. What, Bob, a second phase?
So we talked about applying for a discretionary grant just for the bridge.
So 17?
So it could be as early as 16.
16, okay.
And what that does is if we get a discretionary grant this year, and I'm told by Tracy and Andy that gives us kind of a leg up on the discretionary grant the next year. So I'm not sure, I guess, yet if we would apply for discretionary grant or
No,
to
we
the next
will
year.
in 2016, yes.
Yeah, so I'd say for right now, let's put it in as 16.
Okay.
It is part of the phase 1 project, so.
The commercial apron, air service apron, is that a 2017?
So, if I could, just a little bit more, so it does need to follow, part of the eligibility would be the terminal being built, or phase one being built, so it would have to follow the construction of the terminal.
And if that is the case, and if that is the only way that it can be phased, ideally from an operations perspective, I would like to see the apron, obviously the money's, real world versus the Disneyland. But,
Hey, Flora, can you say that again? We lost you or it got quiet.
oh, certainly.
He said real world versus Disneyland.
Yeah. Andy, Bob Kurz we're talking about the apron extension to facilitate the new terminal building. And my concern is, as I shared earlier, that phasing of this is that looking at building the terminal first and then adding the apron. It's concerning for me. Ideally, I would like to actually do the apron extension first, and then build the terminal to that point. But if it's a phasing issue, if it's a monies issue, I understand. It's sequence.
I think it is better to look at phasing it after that first terminal, simply because we still have the justification of getting a sheet of data or 7460 to show that expansion in the environmental piece. So there's some pieces that really need to fall into place first before we would consider participating in it this year.
Well, and it would, correct me if I'm wrong, Tracy, but would it be eligible if the terminal was not built?
No. Obviously, you're functioning fairly well right now, unless.
It's the truth.
We'd have to build a justification for it.
Chicken and egg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just, before we,
Please.
I just had one other question on the loading bridge. I mean, so we would still consider looking for that discretionary money. I would assume, because that bridge is one of the main reasons for this whole project.
Yep.
We've got a lot of older people here that, I've heard from that don't use ours because they don't have a.
Because you gotta walk across the tarmac when it's
You can
slippery.
climb up those stairs, yeah.
So the bridge is part of phase one, whether it's funded with entitlement funds or discretionary funds, that's the question. But it still would be part of phase one, but it's gonna follow after the building is built.
Yeah,
So-
you gotta have a building first.
Right, so it's one of the last pieces. It's easy to separate off, and we can use a subsequent year's entitlement dollars to fund it, or discretionary to fund.
The building will be designed for passenger loading.
Yes.
Yeah, can I just add?
Please, yes,
Because of the duration of the construction of the terminal, by the time you're getting to the end of the terminal, actually wanting the boarding bridge, you already will be doing this.
Question for the commission on the terminal for 2016. Is there options to, we'd like to compete for this project really as soon as we can from the discretionary standpoint. And it would really help us if there was options for the discretionary request. You mentioned the passenger boarding bridge. That's one option. Roughly $500,000 to $1 million, depending on where they come in at. But we would like some other options. Is there another option for maybe a $2 million discretionary request, or up to a $4 million discretionary request? What other options exist out there with where you're at and where you're going?
So, Andy, if I could, phase one is, the costs right now are estimated at about $9.5 million. Of that, the eligibility calculations that Tracy and Don and I have worked through, FAA portion is about 64% at the 95% rate, which gets us at about 6.2 million is eligible for AIP funds. So, but we've got about 4.1 million in entitlement funds. So that's a shortfall of 2 million. Now, if we add in the apron, which is about, maybe 850 to a million, then we're short 3.1 million. So that could be our larger discretionary request.
And that 9.5 million, does that include the passenger boarding bridge, Bob?
It does, yep.
So Bob, just to clarify, on the apron, that's the expansion that Zora's requesting?
Yes.
Or,
You know, as I look at the exhibit for the phase two, there's quite reduced federal participation in there. What would be the federal participation for phase two, the dollar amount needed to close that out as well?
So phase two, we're looking at about 1.5 million in federal. That's based on a $3.2 million estimate. 45%, 46% federal eligibility. That's provided that, you know, the eligibility calculations that we have completed get approved by the region.
And in that,
So, they got 4 or 5 million, we'll take it.
you have to have work defined in order to apply for it too.
Yes. Thor Einerson.
a question for Bob Coors. In phase two, at that number, the number that you're sharing there, 40% Fed, whatever the state participation, 32%, my calculations are right. How much more in the local share will that be?
For phase two?
Yes.
It's 876,000. Now, that's a local share calculated, so it's a 27% local share. But we have applied for bond funds, which can be used for local share as well. So, you know, and on phase one, the local share is 1.8 million, but 1 million has been pledged by both the city and the county, correct?
Yes.
So Bob, you were saying that you were applying for additional bond funds for next year for phase two?
Right.
And that you would probably have some response in May sometime?
That's when we would anticipate a response, yes. I'm sure we get some inklings as it goes along, but I think that's when we get the formal answer.
Session doesn't start till March.
You know,
Let's talk discretionary timelines. This project scores in the 40s. It's the last project that we end up funding. So when it does compete for discretionary dollars, it's going to compete for the very last discretionary dollars in our program.
and so if I could, Andy, just for their education, that is based on a scale of 100. So
Yeah, based on a scale from 0 to 100, terminals are historically the very last thing funded because we're still funding aprons, taxiways, and runways up to that point. So when we look at the grant cycle, it's something that we don't anticipate that comes out till September timeline.
So that's why we're asking for some flexibility in how you're breaking out the project and what kind of dollars you're gonna be asking for as far as discretionary. So we can make things fit better rather than just having a fixed one lump sum type of project. So there's alternates that can be broken out into those to fit some of those things. Bob and I have had some extensive conversations about alternatives for how to phase and how to break things out. And the fact that 2016 and 2017 are probably, 2016 is probably the most promising time to get a discretionary grant. We have a lot of projects, as Andy identified, kind of coming to a head in 2017. So we get foot in the door, that gives you a little bit of a leg up if there's extra money needed in 2017. Now's your opportunity if you're looking for discretionary.
So
Well, you help guide us here. We'll certainly be flexible in how we put this together.
So Tracy, Tracy and Andy just handed out the 5100 38D order that shows how the FAA is acceptable to units of work. We've talked about the FAA wants a unit of work. That can further be broken down by those, these are examples, but those 6 phases that I have highlighted there. So what we have been talking about a little bit is breaking phase 1 into different phases, if you will, and bidding them out as different packages. What that does for us is we're able to utilize funds that we have in hand and apply for discretionary or entitlements to different sub-phases, if you will, of phase 1. And so it becomes complicated in that we have to bid early in the year to get good prices. So we're looking for a March bid date. And that would then, we would then be able to apply for entitlement funds that are historically available. Checkbooks are loaded mid-April. Then we would have to do another bid package, bidding in July, roughly, to apply for a discretionary grant that would be available in September, as Andy just said. But all these need to be put in our pre-application package that's due December 15th. So we have to anticipate what we're gonna do.
Would like to clarify, even if you do an early bid, I mean, typically when, you know, our allocation is released, it's generally April sometime. And that tells us that we have the term, our checkbooks are loaded. At that point, that doesn't mean that we can actually go forth and issue a grant, you know, in April. It means that we have to, if we have all of the information we need in the pre-application package to push the project forward, that's when we can do that, and it typically takes 4 to 6 weeks before it goes all the way up through the region headquarters and back down to us. So we would probably not be issuing a grant in April. It would more likely be mid-June at the earliest. So that helps you understand what your cash flow might be if you chose to start before you got an entitlement grant. You can't start working on discretionary projects before you get the money. The entitlements, and you do have a little leeway to start ahead of time.
So entitlements are, you can be reimbursed for, discretionary you cannot.
But if I could, Mr. Chair, thank you. So if we bid in March, and I mean, and we do that in the county, I mean, the earlier you can bid, the better the prices, so that makes sense, but are we really putting a bid out there? We don't know for sure if we're gonna have all the dollars.
Well, so then we would say do these first 3, for example. We would do site work, building foundation and structure. We have that money in hand, we put it out for bid, we award the contracts, they start working. The risk is that you don't have money for these next ones. And
It's kind of like playing poker.
well, you know, but right now we're back to where we were dollar-wise, depending on the decision on the art vehicle. Are we going to be, you know, we really need to know, I guess, are we going to be putting $15,000 into that to rehab it, to get us through another year or 2, or are we going to try and get a new truck based on some of the other airports that have been able to keep the index? Because what that does is there's $10,000 or $15,000 locally that's spent on that. It doesn't come off the terminal budget. If it's $800,000, that comes right off the top of the terminal budget, which then impacts how we phase it or what we do there. One other piece we can do is reach out to other general aviation airports who are not using their expiring entitlement funds and request that they transfer them to international.
Hopefully they're nice like we were.
Well, there are a lot of airports that are, their funds are expiring and they don't need them. And some, depending on the clause that you write in your contract, it can either be paid back or not.
Well, and given the information that the airport manager gave us this morning with regard to the type of vehicles that we're going to be eligible for, I guess I would like to see us wait at least 1 year, possibly 2, as long as our vehicle can pass inspection, and see if the specifications are going to change on that vehicle.
I would agree.
Yeah, but then we all gotta go back and ask for one, right?
I'd like
No.
to add to what Bob said about transferring entitlements. I mean, you certainly can do that, and some airports want to be paid back, others don't. If there is a payback, that's something that you also need to incorporate into your CIP and planning as you develop your project too. So, you know, if you're going to be seeking a discretionary grant, you can't be paying back entitlements the same year.
So you have to use your entitlements that you receive to pay back the entitlements that you borrowed from the airport
Right.
before you
So we
request a
would backfill
discretionary.
what you have to repay with discretionary, we would have that you plan accordingly.
So, given the information we have,
Your program.
would we,
Another option for your terminal too, and it's probably, you know, it's one not, I don't think a popular one, but you could defer bidding the whole package until July and then hope that a discretionary amount or grant for the full amount comes through, combining your entitlements and discretionary, that you wouldn't be able to start until that discretionary grant came through.
Which, you know, that we're notified September, August, September. We probably would not be able to start actual construction until, you know, November, I would say.
It would
So-
guarantee higher.
Which you get higher prices and you get contractors starting in November. They may start some of it and they may wait until spring to start. But if they do start in November, you know, then you've got heating costs and winter costs.
Or knowing that you're gonna carry it over, I mean, it could be bid that way too, is my understanding, and that way, you know, like some contractors will actually bid lower because they have a guaranteed work in the spring. Which was not.
So Kraus Anderson Steve is saying,
Potentially.
maybe,
Potentially.
potentially.
In the meanwhile, though, you know, all things being equal, 1 year could be 7% increase in the cost.
Yeah, and just one more thing, if I could. So we did run this by MMB, because MMB, Minnesota Management and Budget, does administer the bond funds through MnDOT Aeronautics. MnDOT Aeronautics is the, what would you say you are in that, Don? You write the checks for MMB?
Well, we're the agency that administers the bond funds.
Okay, so MMB releases the funds to Aeronautics.
And we spend them or under their instruction/discretion.
Right. So I did have a conversation, and I forwarded the email to Bob and to Kyra. I don't know if the rest of the commission got that. I just got it yesterday afternoon about breaking down the project, phase one, into these additional sub-phases. The way I read the email is, it sounds like it's something we could potentially do. However, it's at a risk. It's at a risk that that money isn't available for the other pieces, and you only end up getting a portion of your project done. The other way we could do it is to use entitlement funds for, say, the first 3 sub-phases, and then apply for the bonding funds later phases, because we still have to show the entire funding package to release the MMB funds. So and because we have a 6-month program and we have half of the year's entitlements, we can't obviously get the funds now. But by the time we're actually going to be accessing the funds, hopefully there's a full year program, and then we will have access to the 4.1 million in entitlements. Complicated project.
Yes, it is.
well, let's go back to the ARC vehicle. Can we put that down for 2018?
Yes.
Their consensus, I think, is to put that a couple years out.
Okay, and if I could add, or Tracy, I'd like you to add to that, so before we use entitlement funds on the terminal, the airport needs to certify that all safety needs are met. And a rehab of the existing ARF vehicle as Thor discussed, would satisfy that requirement?
Yes, as long as the exterior inspector signs off on it.
Okay.
And we'll have a happy airport manager.
Okay.
Okay? Did we put a date on the commercial apron? 17, okay, that's what I have, all right, wanted to be sure.
Unless you want that to be part of your discretionary request.
So we could put 16 or 17, I don't know.
So 17, but didn't you just mention, Bob Kors, that that was an ad alternate for 16?
Yeah, yep.
So it could be.
So it could be 16 funds. So shouldn't we plan it for 16?
Okay, let's put 2016 then.
Mr. Chair.
Do you want to get that
Please,
justification?
yep.
See, the commercial apron expansion, I mean, if this project moves forward and for the new terminal to open, this apron has to be there to operate a new terminal, correct?
Well,
We have to
it
do-
doesn't have to be there to operate the terminal. It has to be there to park aircraft.
Aircraft.
And-
Additional aircraft.
And if that drawing that's still floating around here, there's a wingtip clearance on the 737 that goes off pavement. So if we were to push snow that way, we need to make sure that that snow is
Very
clear.
There will be pavement in front of the new terminal, but
I
this
understand.
this is,
The turnout area would be
As he
very,
has
very
pointed
tight,
out,
very close.
if he has an aircraft breakdown, they move it over there so that they're,
And or a combination of a corporate aircraft with the parking.
Yeah, so right now, this is the edge of pavement.
Yep.
Existing. This is where the edge of the new terminal would go. Here's the old terminal.
So there's 140
Yeah.
feet of distance between the existing terminal and the edge of the apron at this point.
So what we're talking about is an expansion of the apron out to somewhere out here. What did we have for a width?
The estimate's based on 100 additional feet from the edge of the building.
So 100 feet out. This is 80 right here, so about to right here, and all the way to the taxiway. So it'd be something like that. So the new terminal, new phase one, could function without that apron.
For one summer season.
For the summer, yeah. Once you get snow, if you're pushing snow from this entire.
And a combination of
Correct.
all right, let's, so the annual rehab, we would have at 2016,
Every year.
every year, yes.
definitely.
Annual. So that would be every year up to the reconstruction.
I think we still include it because you have taxiways that we're working on. We have 422. I think it's every year.
And then the runway 1331 reconstruction, we would put down for 2019 for the design report and the
For the final
specification.
design, yep. That'd be 2019, and then I think 20, 21, and 22 is where we would earmark the phases of construction.
Can you say that again, Peter? We didn't quite hear
19, it'd be 19 for the plans and specs. 20, 21, and 22 for the reconstruction.
Okay. So you phase that construction over 3 years, so it's actually a 4-year project.
Right, with plans and specs. And I think, that is to be determined, Tracy, if it's over 3 years or not.
Yeah, Tracy, we'll take a closer look at that when we have a little bit more time, and we'll include some costs, and then, I guess, confirm 2 or 3 years for construction, and so that'll be reflected in the CIP you get.
And I think a lot of that will come out of that design report, right?
Well, eventually, but for the CIP, we'll take a best guess.
Yep.
All right, general aviation apron lighting,
Well, can we back up a second?
All right,
So
go
we
ahead.
have the taxiway that's not shown on here too. So we would have the same thing that we're showing for the 1331 would be for the taxiway only pavements, or is that the apron as well?
No, the apron's a 2004, I think the taxi would proceed before that.
Okay. So would we want to follow the taxiway?
mean follow the runway with the taxiway? Yeah.
So if we're done with the taxiway in 22, would be 23 for the design.
Yep.
All right, so we do 23, 24, and 25 for the taxiway.
Okay.
General aviation apron lighting, are we looking at 2019? Um, 422 runway 2021?
Yeah, push it back, that's fine.
The lighting for that?
Yes,
Did we talked about maybe getting rid of it altogether.
and I certainly can support that.
Okay.
Let's scratch that one. We've never done it. We've had it on there for 20 years and we've never done it. It's never been a priority.
Can I interject one thing? This is
Please.
Tracy.
Yes.
What about, does runway 422 have any upcoming rehabilitation needs?
Tracy, this is Benita. I think in order of priority, 1331 and the parallel taxiway would come first. 422 is actually in pretty decent shape. We did some major crack repair on that 3-4 years ago. That turned out really well. It doesn't have as many issues as 1331, and I think Thor, in terms of traffic, is pretty minimal on it.
Yeah, 98% of the traffic is running runway with 3113.
So I think for now, Tracy, we'll take a look at it. We'll check out the PCI, but I don't see it as a high priority item.
Right, but it's something to keep in mind as you're developing the 20-year plan that MinDOT is requesting, that it might be one of those out years to
Sure, good point.
their sites.
Snow removal equipment, 2017 or 2018?
I can
2018?
chime in here too. One of the things that we probably do with the snow removal equipment is have it in non-discretionary years.
Okay.
So it's not eligible for discretionary dollars, so we would look at Thor's needs and then say, for example, some of those years where we're only doing the engineer's design report and final design for a project, that's where we try to slide the SRE in. So I'll take a look at that with Thor's help and we'll get that into the CIP.
And I'm guessing 17 though is a good starting point.
And land acquisition as a placeholder in 2016 every year, but
Yeah.
it's been, we haven't done any and don't have any needs right now.
So a couple other things, we will have a master plan and an airport layout plan. That's another requirement, so we'll be programming that in. I'm not sure what date though. We'd
Well,
have
we
to look
just-
at the state requirements and the FAA requirements on
Is
that.
that a 10-year update?
Usually,
Yeah, the ALP was just approved in 2014. We did the work, I think, right around 11 or 12, so I think you'd be out into the early 2020s for
Yeah.
an ALP or master plan.
So 2022
Yeah,
master plan?
or maybe we could put it on the heels of the runway reconstruction project. After that project's done, then we could do initiative planning.
So 2023?
Yeah,
All right, 2023 for master plan update. Further, Bob?
we will have to have a sheet update in there, but that'll be 2000, we'll get that done right away, probably, that'll be 2016. The sheet update to show the apron,
Okay.
we have to update that sheet on the ALP.
Okay.
And then just something to keep in mind, the Exhibit A would be, any land acquisition or anything needs an Exhibit A update. So we might put an Exhibit A update in there ahead of any land acquisition year, if the master plan doesn't
It's not a
follow.
standalone project.
Oh, that's right, well, if they're doing land acquisition, right?
they have to be the
Yeah,
same
it
year.
can be part of a land acquisition project or a master plan project.
Right.
Otherwise, we cannot participate. So it has included in one of those two types of projects.
So we would probably say land acquisition plus Exhibit A and put a cost for that.
Right.
And then if it follows after the master plan, it would be updated.
Yeah.
The general aviation apron, Thor, that we did a few years ago. Are we looking at that following the runway work, like,
Absolutely.
2023?
We have the parallel taxiway in there too, though, so that would
That-
probably come after the runway. and then-
Sequentially,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah,
So
so I
the
think we have
apron
the
would follow
apron.
2025?
yeah, the apron's at 2004, I believe, Thor, 2004, 2005, so we're about 10 years into it.
Right.
That is
So
correct.
if
So
we
it's
did,
probably got
10 years from now, I
Yeah,
think would be
okay, so-
good for planning.
2026, okay. All right. Further from Tracy, Andy, Don, Matt?
Just for planning purposes, typically GA aprons don't rank very high for discretionary projects, so you might want to be considering how you're going to save up your entitlements to address that.
All right. Further thoughts? Any other questions on the part of the commission? Anything else you need from us, Tracy or Andy? Don or Matt?
I just step out for another meeting, but yeah, we'll just continue to work closely with the CH and on the terminal and getting it set up to fit the dollars, and MnDOT will be involved in that as well.
Yeah, we'll have to have some more conversations about the phase one and the bonding and how all this fits together. Like Kenny said, Pittsburgh is gonna be a complicated funding package, so.
It's easier to write music.
Sources to come together.
All right, look forward to that, and certainly appreciate your help and support on all of this.
Very welcome.
We will conclude then, and unless someone else has something.
The only thing I guess I was thinking is just so that everybody's on board, we're doing the terminal phase one in 2016, passenger loading bridge and the commercial apron and pavement rehabilitation. Those are 2016 projects.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. And the ARF vehicle will go through the rehab this year.
Yes.
Just love, again, as we talked, the apron and the boarding bridge are alternates that we can add or adjust if we need to, or remove if we need to fit the dollars.
Yeah, and I think, I'm gonna be working with Kraus Anderson and Alliance here and the rest of the team to really look at ways that we could split out other pieces of phase one to different alternates so that we make sure the funding is gonna fit the actual project.
Yeah.
And one more thing, as long as I have FA and MnDOT on the line, I do wanted to bring it to the commission's attention that we have TSP was a team member for electrical engineering on this project, Nathan Reed. You've met Nathan in the past. He has since gone to LHB as of Monday. And so I talked with Tracy quite extensively about, I wanted to make sure we were still within federal procurement. Nathan has assured me that they do have, he is the person that we've always dealt with, that they do have the electrical staff to handle the project at LHB. But I wanted to make sure that because they were not part of our team as part of the original selection, that it was still okay to use a new sub. And Tracy did confirm that as of yesterday. And Tracy, if you could just confirm that for me, that is okay to switch over.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of fuzzy and gray for a while, but it looks like reading the engineering selection, the AC, that special services such as electrical sub can be selected either directly by the sponsor or by the primary consultant. So I think as long as I told Bob there was no contract with the original company, that would cause some problems as far as just continuing that we should be okay. wanting SEH select as the sub-consultant as a special service?
So we are, SEH is working with TSP to determine, I've heard that they don't want the contract. They want it to go with Nathan, to LHB, but we are confirming that because our first, we do not have a contract with TSP yet, but just so happened that I sent the contract out and I got the call from Nathan the next day. So, but they haven't signed the contract yet, and I believe TSP does not want it, so more than likely we'll be switching to LHB, but something I'll take care of.
Very good. All right. Thank you. With nothing further, we'll conclude this discussion then on the CIP, and thank everyone for their participation this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
this
please.
is a question for Bob. This is so complicated. Even MnDOT and FAA saying it's a complicated issue. Are we realistically looking at going construction in 2016 when we do not have a funding package that's set?
We've got a funding package for phase one.
Yeah, so we have 4.1 in entitlements, of which right now we have access to half.
We have access to half.
But we don't need it until after, they're gonna have to do something in December, as Andy said.
Yep.
So we won't even be needing to access it until June. So we have that, so there's 4.1. We have 1.5 from aeronautics. We have 1 million locally committed dollars, so that is city and county
Yep.
have committed. I saw the resolution from the county. I haven't really seen anything from the city in terms of a resolution,
But we have it budgeted for 2016.
okay.
Our resolution was that these were for construction funds.
I did read that in there, and you're withholding 125,000 until the project is, the books are reconciled on the project. So that, to me, means until after the project is completed and the closeout report is done, which impacts our budget some by 125,000, but I think we can handle that.
And we have 2.2 from bonding.
And we have 2.2 from bonding, which, based on the funding this funding package, it is available. I do want to talk with Steve across Anderson and Alliance and the rest of the team, but I'm inclined to do the whole project at once, all of phase one, bidding that at once. We then have to work within a budget. Right now, our budget is 9.5 million. We've got 8.7 available. We need
That's hoping that the other 2 million comes in on discretionary, right? Is that no?
That means that then, yes, so we
The
have
4.1
here,
we have half of that now.
right, yes,
Well, that's just because the Congress hasn't
Right.
authorized it. That's
right, which,
Just Congress?
Yes.
well, so the program has been
It'll be a normal
reauthorized every year.
It'll be a normal year.
Yeah.
So we have to work
Paul
within
Ryan will be
our value
today.
engineering to bring the project within the available funding. Or work towards getting some discretionary funds as well. So we're gonna be breaking the package, the phase one, into a couple different pieces. So the bridge was, say, roughly 500,000, that would be pulled off. So now our budget is down to 9 million. Our 9 million is for phase one. We would look for some other pieces that we could pull off so that we can work within, so we can award this 8.7 million early in the year. So if we bid in March, we want to be able to award that 8.7 million and get the majority of the building in place.
Hey, Bob?
Yes.
And just to confirm that the $1 billion apron would be part of that, so our budget is actually the
Well,
2016
but that's gonna be
request.
that's gonna be a separate project, and that would be part of that discretionary grant.
But that is not part of what you're
But it's not
talking
part of
right now.
9.5.
That's phase one, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
And so I want to be very clear with that, so the group understands. If I may follow on.
Yeah.
So, where we're at right now, without the apron extension for phase one, is, in essence, if we're talking about the wish list versus what's available, we're $1 million short on phase one.
No, because we could, once the project, we gotta justify the apron. We haven't
Correct.
justified that. So once we get the building up, if we didn't do phase two, we could, in the next year, we would be eligible for $1 million. We could do that and do the apron.
And if I could, in 2017, we'll be getting 1.5 million, because we're getting 500,000 back from
Bemidji.
Then looking at this, to plug this in sequentially then, if we're looking at phase two, at the current, so I'm clear. If we're looking at phase two, that's an additional 876,000 local. Is that correct? And does that include?
No.
Okay.
So that is what the local share should be. If you were giving that's what, when we go through these eligibility calculations, the FAA will pay for some, the state will pay for some, and the rest falls into a local pot. So of the calculations, that 876,000 comes from local dollars. Where those local dollars, they come from the city or the county or from bond funds. So it comes from some other source other than, what it should really say is other funds. Because it's not federal or state.
So, yeah, and just so it's a matter of verbiage though. We still have to come up with other local, state
To do
grant.
phase two, we're gonna have to have bonding money.
Right.
That's where we are.
Yeah, and we're not even, as a design team, we're gonna be designing for phase two, but we're not even thinking about how we're gonna construct it or when at this point.
And
Because the funding is really
But what we will
unknown.
have is a functional, commercial facility. And the second phase has to do with the customs, yes.
Yeah. So here's what you'll have for phase one, which would be right over to this line. So here's phase one and phase two division, as well as the existing terminal building. So you're gonna lose this portion of the existing terminal. Will be demolished in phase one, and then we'll be constructing from here over. This
And
is
I
the-
understand that.
Okay.
Sorry about that, yeah. I was concerned about the money.
Well, without bonding money, we're not gonna be doing phase two. We will have a complete building. We can do the apron in 2017. So we've got a very functional operation there.
Without jet bridge?
No,
I mean,
but
to
jet-
me,
jet
the
bridge
jet-
is
jet-
there.
if this project moves forward, that jet bridge has to be moved. I mean, it just
Well,
makes
and
no
I
sense.
think we'll get the discretionary funds for that.
Yeah, the jet bridge is included as phase one. The only reason we're splitting it out is because it occurs at the end of the project, and we could grab the following year's entitlements or discretionary funds for it.
Yeah, we've been told that that's very attractive for discretionary funding, so
Yeah.
that's another reason to break it out, because it's a way to capture funds that you wouldn't be getting otherwise.
But it's definitely a piece of phase one.
Commissioner Babbitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I've sat here a long time, a lot of years. Thor's been here most of those years, and Ron certainly, because he was here long before any of us. This isn't unusual.
No.
I mean, this is the way all projects have gone, and we've done a lot of projects in the past 24 years that I've been involved. It's a complicated process. The thing to remember is that the taxpayers are protected. We've committed $500,000 from each entity. That's it. So the taxpayers are protected in that essence. Phase two is a whole different deal. I mean, that's gonna require funding, not locally. I mean, I don't see any of us moving forward with that without being able to find outside dollars. So we're looking at phase one, and we do have a project. It's just a matter of putting these numbers together. We know what the local risk is. We've got to address your apron issue, Thor. We're all conscious of that. And I agree with Brian. I mean, we need their jet bridge, but that's part of this project. That's a big issue for people, especially looking to the future. So, you know, it's, you know, it gets a little rattling as you try to put everything together, but it's not unusual. I mean, this is the way it is dealing with federal government on these projects.
And state.
And the state, yeah.
I think it's also important to remember that once phase one is done, we have a fully functional airport. The TSA Customs will still be able to function out of what they have. It just won't be as nice as everything else. That's all.
Just one of the
I feel very confident.
Just one other comment too, and I know I've heard around the community, and this airport has to come out and the commission has to be public that this is a project, if it moves forward, that is for the betterment of the airport commission, the International Falls of Coos County. It is not a project for Einerson business, because that rumor is going around, and it's not fair to their company and their family.
Right.
This has nothing to do with Einerson's business.
And I appreciate that immensely, if I may.
Please.
If I share. Thank you very much. I'm getting a lot of that, frankly. I'm getting a lot of back channel information and people coming to me and discussing this with me. There's been some meetings that I was not privy to and these things came up. It's very troubling for me and my family that's the imagery, that's the focus out there. Not a focus per se, but that's how this project is looked upon. And I certainly again appreciate your concerns for that. It's very concerning for us. You know, it's typical small community, rumor, conjecture, hearsay, mill, what have you. But definitively, that's definitely I'm getting calls and saying people and they're looking at us saying, quote unquote, this project is for the Einersons, and they're going to make millions, quote unquote. They're going to be larger jets for the Einersons, quote unquote. And of course, I've done my best to kindly squash that down, and maybe it's something I need to address publicly, just to be sure that the community knows that is not the case. I realize that I'm preaching to the choir. I realize that everyone in the room understands that with clarity, but the public, there is a portion of the public that doesn't see it in such a way. Thank you.
Well, we'll have a public meeting, and the reason we haven't had one to date is because these pieces are still being put together. And it's like a picture puzzle, trying to find all the pieces to make sure they're all going to fit. The other thing I would say that having been with the airport for 35 or 40 years, I'd say without this terminal project, the years of attracting a commercial airliner to serve us is going to be limited. I think that we can very well see the time when someone is not interested in coming to International Falls. So I think that we need to, and we're spending a minimal amount of local dollars and attracting state and federal monies in the millions to keep the infrastructure of this airport at the top.
Mr. I respect your opinion, but that's your opinion.
That's all.
But as far as the county has, we're adamant, $500,000, not $500,000 and one penny. That's where our board is at right now.
Please.
I'm going to give a couple of facts, not opinions. Thor doesn't get to vote here. All the decisions made are the airport commissions, and you provide excellent service. But you understand that you work for the airport commission. I can tell you, I've heard none of that. So, and I usually hear things about the airport.
I haven't heard it either.
So for what that's worth. The second fact is the vast majority of this airport reconstruction project is paid by other sources than local funding. I mean, comparably speaking, we have very little in it, and that's a fact. I mean, the project won't move forward unless we can meet the parameters that Brian just described. So the public can rest assured on that.
If I could add one thing, to your point, Brian, if the federal government doesn't come through with the other 2 lane, the project doesn't move forward.
Watch that, and that's the scary part of it. I mean, obviously, we need to have the funds before we start construction, because we can't start digging.
Well, we won't start
until we have the
construction
money.
until we have.
Until we have assurance that the money's there.
Yeah, and we can't access the bond funds until we have a federal grant signed, grant in hand.
I just want to understand, and I want everybody else to understand that we are not going to stick the shovel in the ground until we are fully funded for phase one.
Yep.
If it moves forward.
Maybe we can stick that shovel in right there where we're on the wetlands.
Well, and this is, the complexity of this is a challenge for the commission, I think, to just let the public know, but also to create, we heard from both FAA and MnDOT that they're willing to work with us and get creative. And that's what we're forced to do in this situation, but you're right, I mean, I think we have to, in order to leverage that, it's all gotta fall into place, and that's kind of a little bit on some risk involved in that, but I think, given the way we've done it, and kudos to the team for getting creative and trying to make it work, but we have a fully functioning phase one, we can, if it falls into place, and I know the time frame is tricky, but I think it will be helpful to go in front of the public and have you guys help explain it, or Professor Irwin Court, you can come up and explain it.
Well, I want to add one more thing. 10% of the people in this county use that airport. 10% of the people in this county use that airport. 100% of the people in this county benefit, because that's what keeps these jobs here. That's what keeps our taxes reasonable. And that's what's hard to explain that to someone in North Home. North Home and Little Fort, Big Falls, they have airports too. That obviously they could use some help on those. But this one, this is a partnership, and I happened to be at a meeting with Bob that, we heard from our largest employer.
They wouldn't have been interested in this plant.
Without a full-service modernizer.
I don't think you'd see cold weather testers here.
Cold weather testing, I mean, I can go on, and that's from the tax perspective, that benefits everyone in the company. So, this isn't just something we want to do, or dreamed up. I mean, there's a reason to this, because it's a different world since 9/11. And we're the last port, and I want to add this, we're the last airport now in Minnesota to remodel or rebuild since 9/11. They all had to do it, so.
That's what I wanted to comment, is we're the last ones. And I would, encourage people to visit some of the other airports, because I just flew into Bemidji a couple of weeks ago, and their new terminal is unbelievable. And it's what you need, and the reason for it is because of the things that happened after 9/11. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality.
Very good.
So just a couple other things, so real update on the terminal.
All right.
Destin and I think Martin Easter is going to be joining us. We're going to do a code review today with the city official, city or county, or both?
City.
City,
Yes.
Okay. We have been meeting with Russ Anderson, and we're bringing the design team together on Monday now to, this was really a concern as to how we were going to break the project up, or if we were going to, because we really couldn't tell the design team what to do until we knew that, and the ARC vehicle was something that we were rich in as well, so. But this last month, we've been working with that, and we're working with MMB about their funding, and of course, the FAA and MnDOT on their side as well, so. That's kind of where we're at with the terminal.
Just a question
Commissioner Nevin.
for Steve. What's the bid environment we're anticipating to be a little bit more agreeable next year?
I believe so, yes. I think the market materials are stable, but on track with normal inflation, not excessive inflation. So, we built some of those dollars into the current budget, anticipating about a 3%, increase for next year's cycle of bidding. We've been talking earlier the better, so, if we can get anything bid in March, get on the books early, that'd be a good thing.
I guess I have a question too, Steve. Are you seeing any challenges in getting steel for these projects around the area?
Right now, no. This would be a 2016 item, so like anything, as long as there's time built in to order and fabricate the steel. And I think we mentioned this previously, some of the steel members aren't anything odd. Those are typically pretty available. It's your joist and decking for your roof structures that seem to be the longer lead items. I think we're still looking at a fair amount of wood structure here, so that bodes well for us. We do still have some steel roofing though, so shouldn't be an issue as long as it's built into the schedule. And look at enclosure and when it needs to be here, so we're not at a standstill for 3 weeks waiting, for steel to show up.
Yeah, our goal is to start construction then as soon as we get the federal grant mid-June and have an enclosure by this time next year.
Great.
And we did talk about potentially expending some initial funds for the fabrication and shop
Engineering.
drawings, which would be, we were thinking in the neighborhood of $20,000 to get them in line. You can explain it better. Get them in line to order the steel.
It does. You would have to give them I'll call it a limited authorization to proceed with their engineering work so they can get it to production and fabrication. There's typically a 4 to 6 week time period that they need to get it ready, to that point. By the time they draw it, we send it back through engineering staff here for approvals, get it back to them. That way it's sort of queued up, ready to go into their production as soon as we're ready to give them the full authorization to proceed.
So, but that would be, to your point, Brian, that would be in advance of the federal grant. So the whole funding package would not be in place at that time when we would give a limited authorization to proceed up to a dollar amount, to say $20,000 to do just what Steve talked about to move the state forward. So I want you to be aware that that may be something we do to advance the project. And we would also clear that through MnDOT and the FAA to make sure that is a reimbursable cost. However, we do have local funds that could be expended for that, but the stipulation in the county resolution is that it's for construction only, so we can't use that money. And the MMD, we probably could not use that as well, so we'd have to look for state or federal dollars for that piece. I'm thinking that it might be seen as a project formulation cost, which is eligible. It just needs to be paid for locally first, and then it's eligible once the grant comes through. But it's definitely something we would make sure is an eligible expense before we authorize that.
Very good. Please, Commissioner Pavlik.
I would just add that, over the years, we've sat here and watched how many airports close. I'm thinking Grand Rapids,
Yes.
Ely, St. Cloud, all of lost their scheduled air service. People have to understand what we're up against here if we're gonna keep a modern, full-service airport. And without it, I think you can shut the lights out in International Falls and Coochin County. It's that critical. So people have to understand what we're up against here. It's a whole different world.
And it affects the economy of our sister city, Fort Francis.
Yes, great. And we got the best team here, right?
Yes.
You're gonna find us all this. There's the cost cutter sitting right there.
That's right.
We've got the right people in place, so I'm confident.
Very good.
That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We weren't too hard on you, were we?
You wouldn't mind explaining that all over again, would you?
I can almost do it in my sleep now,
I think this-
but I always have to think about it.
All right, we'll move to new business and city administrator. Pull the chair up and maybe you want to sit where Brian, because Brian went to, he had to go to a funeral.
You know this guy?
Yes. Great confidence.
Every now and then we meet. Yeah, he's out before.
We have small one.
Thank you.
I don't need to take a lot of your time, Mr. Chairman and commission members, but I did want to provide some additional information to you. The City Council had met back in September and had authorized moving forward with annexing several properties adjacent to the city of International Falls. And one of the proposals that I had suggested to them is that we consider annexing the properties that are in joint ownership by the Airport Commission and or the city and county that involve airport operations. And so what we've prepared is a aerial photo that highlights the properties that are outside of the city limits of International Falls, but owned by the county and the city or the Airport Commission and are used for airport operations. The second sheet is just a listing of all the parcels by parcel identification number and has a description of the owner's name, address, and various other information with it. We're envisioning that it would be beneficial for the city to annex the airport properties into the city for primarily two reasons. The first would be if and when this project goes forward for the terminal project, we think that there's going to be more timely and responsive inspection services if we can provide those inspection services with our building official, Kelly Myers, versus having to wait for a contract official or a state official to come from an outside location to respond to needs for inspections at the terminal project. And then secondly, we see a financial benefit to that in that our permit fees for a project are quite a bit lower than what the state's permit fees would be. And Kelly Myers had done an estimate, and if the project was a $10 million construction project, and I heard that phase one was about $9.5 million, but assuming a $10 million project, the state permit would be just under $80,000, and the city's permit fee would be around $23,000. So there's actually a $57,000 just in inspection and plan review fees. So we see that of value to both the city and the county as well. And so I wanted to come here today to just provide this information to the Airport Commission, and I had met with the county board last week, and I just provided this again from an operational standpoint, and see if you have any concerns or issues with us moving forward with this. And I did hear some concerns from the county board. One of the suggestions was that perhaps the Airport Commission and the county could contract with the city to have Kelly do it on a contract basis versus actually annexing the properties. And then there was also some concerns mentioned that with the city expanding the corporate limits to these additional parcels, that the adjacent property owners might have some less control to prevent the city from doing further annexations in the future. And given that our city attorney is not in the state at the present time, those would be a couple of questions I'd run by him, and I expect him to be back by the end of the week. So I wanted to provide this information to you for informational purposes. I wanted to see if you had any issues or concerns. I'd be happy to entertain those issues and concerns and then bring those back to the city council and the city attorney if need be.
Okay, concerns?
Well, I'll express the same concerns I did at the county board. You know, we've had enough visits from the adjoining property owners here that I don't even have to talk to them to know that they would be very concerned about the city moving that close. You know, past experience with the city has not always been good when it comes to annexation, and predates you, Mayor, but you know, the obvious next step, if we were to approve this, the obvious next step is, well, let's go right to 332. It would be an obvious extension. You know, the other side of it is, you know, you know, half of the airport or a portion of it's in the city right now, a portion of it's in the county. Personally, I like that. I'm comfortable with that. It's been that way all these years. I just don't see a huge outstanding reason to start annexation. You know, and this is only the airport parcel. What we were presented with, of course, as Ken outlined, I mean, there's a lot of other parcels that he's looking at. Some I thought maybe, you know, I'm just speaking for myself. I guess I can speak for the board. Some they thought maybe made sense, but others they have their concerns about. So, but we mentioned that you've got adjoining property owners here who have no idea that we're looking at this. Maybe they do now, but you know, I always like to talk to the property owners before we do anything. And And this doesn't help because they're gonna think we're trying to put something together here before they would even learn. So with that, I mean, I just,
Well, certainly as one member of the city council, I would say that, not interested in taking in any properties that individuals are not interested in being a part of the city. We certainly want their approval. The items that we have here have all been purchased by the city and the county, so there's, and I'm looking at the northwest end of the runway up there on where County Road 219 and 11th Avenue. We bought all those because that's where we have the lights, malls coming into the airport, so we needed to buy those. I know that some of them we ended up, I think there was one we ended up having to take. The other properties we were able to take and reach agreement, and so we bought people out and moved them. Alan Anderson was the person who actually did he and Joe Boyle did all the negotiations on those. They're not critical. I think the one that's critical is probably, as Ken pointed out, this one right in the center where the terminal building is. If it's not in the city, it's my understanding that our inspector, Kelly Myers, would not have jurisdiction. The state would do it, and that will cost us, as Ken pointed out, probably an additional $50,000. And I don't know that there's any reason not to have that piece as a part of it. Again, we're not looking to expand the city other than to take in properties that the city owns. That's all.
So who you're talking to, Mr. Chair, just parcel 4100?
Yes.
That's
41,000.
41,000.
41.
4110 or 41, yeah.
Yeah, that's the most critical one. We certainly think the others make sense, but if there's a concern, we certainly. But the city has got monies invested in all of those also.
The only concern I would have is, we would have to, if we agreed to move forward with that or to agree with the city, there is a large group of hangars in there that would now become taxable city property, if that's correct.
I don't know. That's a good question. I assume that the county assessor would have to determine
I think that whole row of hangars is right down still within the county. And then they would become eligible to be taxed as a city.
They would probably end up under the city's levy.
And a savings of 50,000 is $50,000. I mean, that's, just.
Yeah, we can certainly ask the county assessor what that would mean to those parcels that are in the hangar row there. How much additional it would cost them to be a part of the city. They're paying county taxes now and school district.
and again, everybody could, Mr. Chair, that's another group that needs to be represented.
Sure.
You know, if this whole thing's about inspections, I mean, I think we'd want to see some hard numbers, and is that amount of money enough to justify annexation? I don't know. If we're gonna do that, I mean, this parcel, maybe we annex just to where the building site is, or, you know, whatever parcel that's in. I mean, if this could be broken down into 4 smaller parcels. I mean,
That may be, I'm sorry, forgive me. If I may interject, and to Wade's concerns, I wonder also, what is the value of having a local inspector versus a state inspector? That obviously has a certain amount of value.
So on those projects, you have to wait for the state inspector to come many times before you can move forward with closing up a wall.
Correct.
Or any.
At the end of the day, all done legally, all within ethical, boundaries, clearly, but just asking the question, I don't know what that value is, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of contractor time, we can see just on the building permit fees that it's 50,000. It may well be another 50,000 in contractors' time because they're being held up because they can't close up something, waiting for an inspector to come from LaGrange or Duluth. Or St. Paul.
You know, that was one of the points we wanted to make, is that clearly the building official here being local is going to be much more responsive from a time perspective than somebody who has to come from an outside location.
And he stays certified. I know that, I think last week he was at a certification conference, making sure that he continues to have all the necessary credits to be an inspector.
Or if I could think about it, does it make sense? I mean, if he is certified, I mean, it's nothing against Kelly, does a great job. Why wouldn't the state allow that, or belongs to contract? Do we know that? That's what I'm saying.
Well, if you would certainly want to question that, we can have the state give us, but
when I look at that amount of money, I mean, my gosh, it's not a lot of money in the scheme of things. But anyway.
Okay.
Obviously we want to be responsible fiscally, but, you look at this map, that's a big expansion of the city there.
Very good, Mr. Chairman. I'll pass these concerns on, or I'll discuss this with the city attorney and make sure that looking at the annexation statutes and stuff, and contract law and that type of thing, see if those are options, and then we can report back to both the city council, the county board, and the airport commission at a future time.
Well, and I think we heard from Bob Coors that they were going to meet with Kelly today to have a discussion with regard to inspections. So we can get something from them also.
Very good.
All right.
Well, thank you very much for the time.
We talked about planning and zoning and doing a comprehensive plan at some point.
Yes.
I would think this would be a real good candidate for that kind of discussion about how this would make sense in terms of planning and zoning and looking at the future. So look forward to moving that project forward to, or at least start.
Yes, the city is going to do a comprehensive plan in 2016, and we budgeted for a consultant to come in and help the city. So we will certainly, with the planning commission, talk about how this all fits together on land use.
I think the other issue that we looked at is what would be the impact for doing projects, and my understanding is that the airport commission has its own zoning authority and zoning regulations, so it's not like there's a difference between the county's zoning regulations and what the city might have, because either one of them would apply because of the zoning regs that are already in place for the county board, or for the airport commission.
That's why it's been a good partnership, because either side can impose.
Right.
And that's been successful. I'd like to see it stay that way as much as we can. And again, the concern for the neighbors, where we'd expand beyond that, is the forced annexation issue that came up in the past. And see, we can all sit here and say it won't happen again.
Sure.
You know what?
No.
That's
Things will change.
that could change with the next election. So,
Sure.
So certainly a concern we hear.
Very good.
All right.
Thank you much.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
The next item on there is the airport funds, and we will get that before the county's already done it, so the city just needs to do a. That's for the project.
That is for the project, and that is also what the county did their for the deficit fund.
Okay.
The deficit, yeah.
Yep.
So, I need to formal request
Yes, to the
the
city.
commission the commission needs to send a formal letter to the county requesting those funds.
Oh, okay. All right. So we need a motion then to send a formal request to the city of International Falls and the county for the airport funds then? They've already approved it.
For the deficit.
For the deficit,
Yes, we approved that.
So that's,
So you don't
You did
need
hear
a
that, didn't you, Ken?
letter requesting
Just grunts.
the funds. It's been approved, but my understanding, the
Okay, so
letter
we
needed
need
to
to
be
send a formal letter?
sent.
maybe what Teresa.
It says formal letter to county and city.
Teresa will take care of it. We've approved the money. We were afraid Ken was gonna go belly up there if we didn't get some cash over there.
What was the total again, Mr. Chairman?
104,000, I think it was 52.
52,992.
So, motion by Commissioner McBride to request of the city and the county airport funds to make up the deficit in the cash flow.
Mr. Chair,
Please.
I just have one question. The $14,000 overpayment, is that going to be added to the deficit then, Kyra?
That,
Because we have to refund that overpayment, right?
well, that payment's already been approved several meetings.
Oh, okay.
I was waiting from MnDOT to find out how to initiate that payment, where the check would go, how, if they were gonna credit us on another grant or how that would work. So according to Don, today we will issue that check, so
So it won't impact fund balances over at the city?
should not.
Okay.
And you can rest easier.
Yeah.
Actually, we're glad you brought that up. That was a few months ago, but I don't think any of us realized how large that had grown.
So we have a motion by Commissioner McBride. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Nevin. Discussion with regard to the letter to the city and the county. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Letters will go forward. Contracts for the FBO and management of the airport. Are they in our packet here? No?
What happened with their? When looking at the contracts, the original dates that I had on the contracts, one expired in 2014 and then one was due to expire September of 2015. After further research and looking through the FBO contract term is set to term in 2017. It was redone back in 2012. And then, so I had Steve Sherman draw up the management contract. Then after thinking about it a little longer, I recalled that there was one meeting where I thought they had extended that contract for a year. In looking back at the minutes back in August of 2014, the commission actually approved that contract for 5 years from that date. So that contract has also been approved, it just was not completed. So I've got the contract drawn up and the dates are all correct, and so after the meeting I will just obtain the signatures for that.
And so the FBO contract goes through 2017 and the management contract goes through 2019?
Yes, the management will go September 19th, 2014 and will term September 18th, 2019.
Okay. All right, so we don't need any action. All right, very good, thank you. We'll go to the manager's report.
Yes, let's see, transitioning into winter, unfortunately, it is the way it is. We complain about it, doesn't change things, interestingly. Continuing on with our wildlife study, still have a bunch of the cameras on station and working with our biologist, interesting amount of data. I'll work with Sean closely. We'll definitely, I'll guarantee we'll be up and running with our tree clearing, what have you, regular zone on the 16th, that's a guarantee. We covered the pavement conversation, clarifying the conversation with the fire truck, then looking for approval from the commission to do repairs to bring the fire truck up to spec with a quote-unquote estimated cost of $15,000. I'm confident we'll be under that number, but I wanted to put that number to be sure we're covered.
Okay, motion to authorize the manager to spend up to $15,000 to rehabilitate the ARP vehicle. Motion by Commissioner Nevin, second by Commissioner Pavlik. Discussion, please.
When the 139 inspection occurs, do they actually take a piece of equipment out and make sure that all of the functions are at it? I mean, do they actually fire the turret to a certain, do you have to go through
It's
this?
astonishing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's literally everything. It's all the equipment, pump pressures, volumes, gallons, tachometers, I should say, hour meters, what have you.
Frame. Check that frame.
Training records, they have a checklist for the truck, they go through the truck,
Okay.
et cetera. Yeah, it's very, very detailed.
And a safer piece of equipment, I mean, that was.
Yeah, that's the key.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Authorized.
Thank you. One last thing, somewhat humorous, depends on which angle you're on here. We've changed the 139 inspection, now has been pushed back to November 16th. Of course, that's right in the middle of Holy Ramadan week, deer hunting. So, of course, on the staff here, what do you mean it's coming to 16th? We can't do it. It's really good then, gentlemen. So that's been kind of an interesting discussion among troops that we're going to miss it. But that's it.
How is the new piece of equipment functioning?
Very well, essential. Yeah, fine, it's new equipment, so we're definitely utilizing it. We're already buying spare blades for it, we're using blades.
How big is some of that stuff that you're taking down on there?
Oh, 6-8 inches.
Yeah, I mean, it's good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the equipment is rated for 10-inch stock, so, yeah. Put Jake Haney out there with a hockey helmet on and a mouth guard, he's good to go.
Very good.
Does it do anything to the stumps that are there?
Yeah, it'll definitely, yeah, it'll right to the ground, right, yeah.
I remember when that was done and you weren't allowed to.
Your memory is unfortunately a good one. You're exactly right. We had to leave the stumps. Yeah,
You found the solution.
we did. Thank you.
Just a question, the Sun Country flights, we've had one this fall, another one right occurring in November. I mean, those are
Yes.
continue to be full, and another
That is correct.
another piece of the puzzle here, that people utilize that and they're full.
Very good. Anything further, Thor?
No.
Thank you. Great. Thank you for your report. Secretary's report.
Claimants are in the packets there. They are still down from last year. We haven't quite hit our 10,000 mark on our claimants, but we're close. But we are roughly 1,000 off from last year. In terms of grants, I received marketing grant payment of $5,113.23 last week, and I'm still waiting on a payment from the federal government for some other stuff that was done in regards to the pavement. I received the marketing grant agreement application, which I sent back last week, and then I received the actual agreement on Monday, and have sent that to the city and county for approval of the resolution. So now the only grant that I'm waiting on is our M&O grant from.
So we've got the marketing monies at $15,246. That's going before the city and county for approval now?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, that should go before them next week.
And these open grants now, with the payment of the $14,196, that'll close out the 2012 one that Tracy was mentioning, the 2013 one.
Yep, we're kind of working our way back and working our way up. Everything's been claimed on all of them. It's just a matter of SCH beginning that closeout process for each. So they are in the works, and Don is aware of everything that needs to be completed.
Very good. Okay.
Let's see. There has come up an issue with the skidster and the grant right now, which I'm working on. And I was hoping Benita would still be here so she could touch a little bit on it.
Yeah, I had a brief conversation with Benita in regards to that, and she's going to calling us later today.
Okay.
And we'll get that straightened out.
Okay.
Calling who?
Benita.
Calling who?
MnDOT.
Oh, MnDOT,
yeah,
okay.
for the grant process, exactly, yeah.
Because that's a local state project, that's not an FAA, they would not approve that one.
That is a fact.
Because they saw that as another
Piece of snow
snow removal piece, and
You don't want to use that for those high end.
we're only allowed so many pieces of snow removal equipment, so.
You don't want to spend those local dollars, if you're moving snow, obviously put that towards the higher end vehicles.
Okay.
All right, just an update, there's also a, list in your packets of all the ad boards in the terminal building. All of them have been spoken for now and leases have been signed. I'm just waiting on a couple of the actual advertisements to be put up in there.
So
all
we
of
have
them-
contracts with all of those now?
Yes, I do.
Wonderful, good work, very good work.
All of those are complete and it looks nice in there. And then also the hangar leases, I have now received all of the hangar leases in hand. And they are all up to date, including the Doyle families. We have that one, Steve Shimon worked on that one, he was able to get that, so. All of them are in hand.
Great.
And then, as far as marketing goes, I just put our Fort Francis Times, online, analytics in the packets for your review, just to give an idea on how our ads are doing on the Fort Francis Times website. And then I also have, done some work to the Falls International Airport website. All the agendas and minutes are now on the website. You can go on and we'll see the agenda and minutes on there. And I will keep that updated. In doing so, I also was able to pull some analytics from the website, just so you can kind of get an idea on how our website is performing different times of the month. I can do different reports on how it's performing at different times of the year. Just seeing how many people are visiting the website and everything else. So it's kind of some good information that it'll show you where they're going when they do go on the website and whatnot. And then lastly, we got everything finalized at the terminal building, and Mid-Continent has now taken over we've bundled everything for Frontier and Dish, and so Mid-Continent has taken all of that over, so. Telephone,
internet,
TV, and internet is all under Midco bundled, and should save us a significant amount each year, so.
Very good. So, back to this analytic report on our website. In the past 30 days, we've had 1,000 people visit the site. And would you know what our top referrer is? Where they're coming from? On the other side.
On the other side, there are some different breakdowns. It doesn't break out specifically, but you can see some people went there directly from the Dryden Observer was one. 38 people came directly from Fort Francis Times. So those are some different breakouts there.
Very good. That's very helpful. Have this every few months, that would be good to know where we're spending our dollars, if we're getting that return on our marketing.
Is it effective? It's great, guys.
You're gonna modernize this here.
Getting there.
Very well, thank you.
Thank you. That's all I have.
All right. Thank you. Good report. Great work. Please.
One question. Historically, our ins and outs are down. I think the whole airline industry is down a little bit.
Yes.
What is do we have a magic number? Is it with
10,000.
REAS? It's 10,000. Is that in, out, or total?
No, that's, you know,
That's in and out. So
I mean, that's
out.
one.
It's out.
It's
10,000 in payments.
in payments out of here.
Out.
Yeah.
So
Which
10,000 is our number.
We made that.
We made that.
Yeah. And we still got 3 months to go there.
Just wanted to be sure it was out. It wasn't in or.
No.
And we get to count the Sun Country, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. This doesn't include any Sun
It does
Country
not.
numbers.
Does not.
So we'll have some hundreds more under that one. Yeah, the FAA will come out with a report sometime in 2016, generally about the middle of the year, and tell us what our numbers were for last year.
I like what coming in.
Go now.
Get
him here.
FAA wants to go out.
Yeah, they wanna go the other way.
Negative flow. All right, let's go to members. Member Pavlik came to the commission.
Maybe, I think I have a question for probably more than anyone. Right now, oil prices are down, airfares are down somewhat, at least right now. But this merger, what was it, US Air and American?
Correct.
Into the biggest airline now in the world.
Yep.
Less competition. What do you see there, George?
I think right now that the seat prices will actually continue to go down a bit because of the fuel costs. But typical airline industry, they're going to lag, and then they'll use an excuse if the seat prices are down, now for the sake of the conversation, 10%, an arbitrary number. If the fuel cost goes up 10%, they're going to they'll jack the seat prices by 25%. So, but yeah, no question about it. Right now, adjusted for inflation, the industry, as far as the low price of the fuel, has never been in such good shape.
Interesting. Well, we could certainly, we need low fuel prices and better ticket prices to get these employments back up. But, I'm not even too concerned about these because we've seen these before. And then the only other thing I'd bring up is, the airport talking about references to you. The only time I ever did hear one was when we rebuilt the airport road. Remember that? Mm-hmm. The county, I just came back and they were calling me an environmentalist, but I said, let's build this road with no telephone, like they do everywhere else in Minnesota. Yeah. Because it was state aid funds, it didn't hit us locally. And Doug, bless his heart, was so conservative, but I mean, he was doing the right thing, trying to save money too. Sure. I said, my gosh, let's start acting like the rest of these communities. So the county board went along with it, and we did that as a pilot project. But I remember getting a comment, oh, you just did that for Inersons, which is absolutely false and had nothing to do with it. But to this day, I get compliments on that road, and that was built. Nice road. And we built that as a model for what you can make streets in International Falls and the other communities look like if you do some of the things that we address there. And one of the things I'll never forget when they had us at that forum in West Virginia, wherever it was, they had a picture of the entrance to International Falls coming from the airport, which is what gave us the idea to do the airport road as a pilot project. And then they showed us that actual picture, and then they showed us brought up a picture next to it where they had done airbrushing and done some things differently. Couldn't figure what makes that look so much better. Well, one of the big things was telephone lines hanging all over the highways. You don't see that in these communities. They get them on the alleys. If the companies definitely want them in the air, or you can bury them now, and their longevity is fine. So I mean, there are a lot of things you can do that don't cost a ton of money, but it takes a lot of convincing with different parties to make those kinds of things happen. So, anyway, I just wanted you to know that's this other issue you said I've heard nothing. But I did hear something on that one, and Chuck Lepper was with me, and we made clear that there was you weren't even your family was not even talked to about that project. So that was strictly the county. So.
The only thing, Mr. Chair, I wish Don Petman were still with us because they've got all those stunted spruce trees. I wish he would have thrown in some of those Janela Naples or whatever he does along it.
I remember. Yeah.
But you're right, it doesn't.
Anyway, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner McBride.
There's a couple issues. In September 21st meeting, we talked about TSA, and I went and talked with the sheriff about deputizing or ways to figure out how to use the local security company and have them be able to have arrest authority. And it's just very, very unworkable with post laws. Then we get into part-time deputization into, I'm not saying union issues, but seniority issues, where do you place these people? And it's just a nightmare. It's a nightmare. And we don't see any savings for the airport and obviously maybe in cost of the county. So we're stuck with it, and we need somehow to get TSA to pony up. And then this, we talked about a public meeting, and I guess we're going to have to talk about pretty soon when we're going to have this. Obviously, people leave in the wintertime, but I think we need to have that out to give people a chance to come and speak to the airport commission. So I don't know when we're gonna do that, and the last thing I'd throw out there is, does the airport commission need to have a formal motion to proceed with the construction, or
Well,
we'll
when we
need a
accept
form?
the bids,
When we accept the bid, will be a formal motion at that point to move forward or not to move forward with the bid package and the funding package.
There's no project until that motion.
Yep, okay. As far as public meeting, November's tough, but.
Yeah, November's tough.
Opening at deer season?
Sure, let's do that.
That's the excuse. So
Okay.
we get to go to a co-review on the terminals.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks, Bob.
everyone.
Have a nice day. Thank you. Thanks, Sean.
Bob, we still like.
You staying here? They're walking back?
What's that?
Are they walking back?
Yeah, I think they're just running to the.
You're going to the city.
Oh, next week.
Sean, you'll have nicer weather, I hope, when you go home
I
here.
hope so. It was.
So you'll find home, he's fine.
What would something like December the 10th look like? That's a Thursday?
Let's see, we'll be back. We'll be back.
We've got our big meeting, yeah, the AMC.
We'll be back. Election day is the 8th. 10th, December 10th?
What day is that, Bob?
That's a Thursday.
Thursday?
It's the second Thursday of the month. Does that conflict with anything?
Thursday,
That's
second
right,
Thursday,
no.
not for me. But I never, I think we'll be here. We're gonna be, Brian and I are gonna be in St. Paul sometimes. We will see our daughter.
Well.
But we'll probably.
December 10th,
7 o'clock in the evening?
7 o'clock and
Do it here?
Yeah.
third floor?
Well, I think it's easier here.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of turnout we're gonna get.
Well, if we have a huge turnout, we can always tweak
With the chairs, but yeah, if we have to move upstairs, we will, but,
All right, boardroom?
airport
We've
turnout
had
project.
We've got 40 people in here sitting.
And I think it's important too, if we could have SEH folks here, or at least some visuals so that people can.
I think we have to.
And I know that the chamber even suggested that they would help sponsor, but as long as it's gonna be here, I think we'll probably do this one.
Okay,
Now, do you have a SEH, we can do a short presentation or kind of explain the project? Or we want to see that happen to work with you on what that presentation will look like, what we'll want to then.
I think we'll look at something close to what we did for the Senate Capital Investment Committee.
Yep.
In, 10-15 minute presentation,
Yep.
opened up for questions.
Questions, let people.
Okay,
We won't make you fly up in a snowstorm.
Promise good weather.
all right, thank you. Further, Commissioner Brett. Thank you. Commissioner Nevin?
Just two things. I just want to again commend the work that Kyra's done, because for the first time in a long time, all of those lease agreements are in place.
Yes.
Everything is formalized, including all of the advertising boards, and it just takes a considerable amount of work to track those people down, get them to sign off. And so I just again commend all the work that Kyra's done. Also on the employment numbers, we're go where the testing season starts Monday, so we're anticipating a very busy November, December. Those will certainly help our numbers, and the whole season looks to be really, really strong again. So most of the folks that will be coming here in this early part will, well, I think 99% of them will be flying in from overseas and domestically here. So we're going to see some real strong numbers here.
That helps our employments again.
If I may, we can share about the training for the destruction of the cars.
Well, yeah. Well, that Jaguar Land Rover is going to donate 2 vehicles for local firefighters to practice Jaws of Life, removing. It's annual training that they do, but they needed vehicles, so they had 2 vehicles that they're donating. And Jaguar Land Rover Management is going to be here in early November, and they're also going to contribute locally to the food shelf and a couple of other local charities. They want to become seen as corporate citizens here, so those are all nice public relations pieces. So.
Commissioner McBride.
Kara, we'll probably need to advertise a public meeting, probably
Yes.
a couple times in the paper at least. So.
Motion by Commissioner McBride to advertise the public meeting on radio and newspaper.
Press, yeah.
Second by Commissioner Nevin. Discussion? All those in favor of the motion to advertise the public meeting December the 10th, 7 p.m., signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is carried. Further, Commissioner Nevin. Thank you. I think there's anything talked to the other airports, and we're looking at having a local airline service action committee meeting along with the McCoa meeting, and I believe that's going to be in Duluth in April. And so it's a convenient place and an opportunity to see the airport and everything down there. So if folks are interested in that, I'll be getting those dates. Next meeting. You want to have it on the fourth Wednesday, which is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving.
I have one meeting, I have my calendar, I know I got a meeting that day, but schedule at 8 o'clock and we'll make it work. That's usually our usual.
That's our usual time, 8 o'clock that day. That would be the 25th, November 25th at 8 a.m. Okay.
What do you want by best?
All right. Very good. Anything further to come before the commission?
One, I guess, clarification point. I was also at the table this morning on the pay applications for the pavement rehabilitation, and I didn't do Kyra any favors. So what happened, pay application 1 was approved at the last meeting. I was looking through the minutes. It was 100,000, exact number, 737. 100,737 and 47 cents. I then sent the pay application to Kyra, and she put it in the package or added it onto the agenda for 106,000. And the difference is retainage. We have a new pay application form that says 106 on the front, but then it has the retainage calculation on the back. They reduced it down to 100,737. So the pay application we approved at the beginning of this meeting, before I started talking, was actually approved at the last meeting. So I think what I need to have happen is the 106,000 payment to KGM be rescinded, and then the original, if it makes any sense, if I could back up. So 100,737.47 cents was approved last month, and then the remaining payment is 116,546.72. The 106,000 payment was essentially what was approved last month with the addition of retainage. So it's a new form on our part, so I apologize for the confusion on that. So we need to take away the 106,000 and then change the amount for the pay application 2 final to a different amount than what was approved at the meeting earlier.
So that's the 116 then?
Yes, so just to clarify, 100,737. Yep, 100,737 and 47 cents was approved last month. And then the 106,000, if I have the number right, 3944 will be rescinded.
Yep.
And then the payment due to KGM is 116,546.72 cents. And that is the final payment. The total at the end of the day would all be the same, 217,284.19 cents. It was just a new form that we threw at Kyra there, so I apologize for that. With that, there's 2 pay applications, 2 payments made to KGM.
Motion by Commissioner Pavlik then to rescind the motion of the 106,000 that was in the bills today, the invoices today, and we will have a final payment to KGM of $116,546.72.
Which we need to approve.
Yes, so
We can do that.
we're rescinding one and then making this one. Is there a second?
One second.
Second by Commissioner Nevin. discussion?
Still under budget, though, correct?
Still 10,000, that's it, for
10,000 in the budget, that's great.
Sorry for the confusion.
No, thank you.
Good point.
All those in favor of that motion to approve the 116,546.72, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried, and we'll send the other one, all right? Thank you for all the good information and good work, Kara.
Move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Commissioner Pavlik. Oh, excuse me.
Could we indulge the board and have a few minutes to talk about our lease?
Go to lease?
Yes. We don't have a signed lease agreement with the airport commission yet. Our contention is that we would like to have a 10-year lease effective January 1st, 2016. And if we can do that, we'll sign it as soon as we can get it.
What do we have, 5 years now?
So the 5-year renewal, actually it's a 5-year, it's
Is it a 5 and a 5?
Yeah, well, it is 10 years, saying that the fixed cost is for 5 years, and then at the end of that 5 years, the termination will be made for the next 5-year period. So the issue with what we are getting back is that the airport commission wishes us to start in 2015. We're asking for a start date of 2016.
If I can clarify, the lease agreement, because we don't have any leases on hand, or we didn't have any leases on hand with a start date. We wanted the leases to start as soon as possible. That would be January 1 of 2015. The actual payment amount still goes out your 10 years, and that payment will not be due until January 1 of 2016. So the lease just starts sooner, but the payment date isn't started until you're into that lease.
Yeah, but in effect, it becomes a 9-year lease. At 4 years from January 1st, then that price is renegotiated. What we would like is 5 years from January 1st of 2016 to have that lease payment fixed.
Because that's what you originally agreed to, is a 10-year lease.
Right.
Yes, I can see what he's saying, because this will reduce it by 1 year.
But they're getting 1 year free.
Well, but no, we're
Because
not.
we're not charging anything for that.
No, we're not, because we already, when we built the hangar, it was based upon a 20-year time period. And we've done this approximately 19 plus years. So we are still honoring this original lease agreement, whether there's a printed copy of it or not. And so we're saying that we want a new lease after our old one has expired of 2016. If we agree to the lease that is proposed now, then our original lease is only 19 years. And in 4 years from January 1st, 2016, we're back to negotiating a price on the lease.
We're not negotiating.
Do you grasp the significance?
Yeah, I guess your original lease is being shorted by some months.
Right.
So is the question the start date of the lease, or is it the 5-year payment year?
Well, in effect, but I mean, the one that affects our pocketbook, if you will, potentially is the 5-year payment plan. If we start, according to the way the lease is written, it starts January 2015. You have no payment the first year. Well, we already under an existing lease, although nobody can find a copy, that says that we are not making payments because of the infrastructure we built. So that gives us nothing. So our lease should begin on 2016 and thereby honor the terms of the original lease. You know, when we, and there are about half the board members who are here, when we went through this almost 20 years ago, there was a protracted period of negotiation, and we made the investment to build that hangar with the understanding that we would be recognized for that effort. It didn't cost the airport anything. Of course, the airport is always looking at money and concerned about it. So we entered into that with the good faith belief that this lease would be honored. And all we're really doing is asking the airport to honor that.
Seems to me we even had a fist fight or two 20 years ago.
Well, we're close, but.
Almost, yeah.
We didn't, technically, we didn't put the hangar up until spring of '96, too. So if the first 10 years would go up to the end of this year and then 10 more years, if you do it the way you're thinking, one of those is gonna be 9 years and 10 years.
I can only speak for myself, Mr. Chair, but I mean, I feel strongly about honoring agreements, and I do recall all that, and they were 20 years, and that was, and we had, it was a little bit unorthodox the way we set that up, but at the time we had.
Well, and they made improvements from their hangar to the taxiway.
Yeah.
And so that's why we did not charge any monies.
Exactly.
I remember that part of it, but I guess I'm trying to think, so we had the attorney draw these agreements up starting 2015. We would need to go back and change all of them to 2016, or is it just this one?
Theirs are, no one can find them, right?
Well, we were the last, as I recall, the last to build that original group. I think everybody else had started that fall, and then there was an issue with the FAA, and there was a freeze put on construction, and so.
Okay. All right, so we need to take a revised lease agreement to read starting 2016. With the
10 years.
payments through for 5 years, with the five-year re-up.
For them as original owners.
Yes.
Per the original agreement.
And if there's an issue that there's concern about not having a written lease agreement immediately, then put it 10 years and 2 months or whatever, and the first 2 months being forgiven. I mean, we just want to recognize our, original build date.
You guys look like you did 20 years ago,
None of us do. Is there a motion to have a motion by Commissioner Pavlik to start the lease agreement with January 1, 2016, and with a 5-year and a 5-year re-up? Second by Commissioner McBride.
Is that gonna take us any, Tyra, is that gonna take any legal work to change it those dates?
Yeah, I'll have to have Steve redo
It should be pretty quick though.
and that's just for that.
For that lease, yes.
So at that point, Mr. Feeler, you guys would then sign your lease with no issues?
Right. As soon as we get a copy, we'll get it back.
Fair enough.
Okay, further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion is carried.
Good thing you spoke up when you did there. We were just about adjourned.
Accept your motion to adjourn.
You had to sit through the whole meeting to wait for that.
Second. Oh, you seconded. Good man.
All those in favor of the motion to adjourn?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.